way.
We're sitting in the front pews. I think we're sitting here and then getting up and down. Got some wild hair going on there.
So Barbara's the gang all here. You know, my friends are always just
Get around.
always falling asleep. For 2 minutes early. Yeah, okay, that's the pretty. Okay, well, welcome everybody. I know about 98% of you, and I've met a couple of new people tonight, which is great. So, welcome to the new people. I just asked, the new people, have you been to a Siska meeting yet? Any of the ones I met? Or you've been? Okay, so why not one embarrass you? Anyway, I'm Jenny Sutton, and myself and 5 buddies are going to present on what it says up there. And that's a picture of all of us. Is that what?
Calvert.
Calvert, yeah.
Is that sort of a timer thing or something?
We're
Anyway.
pretty clever.
Okay.
That's right, yeah.
So here's what we're going to cover. So I'm starting off with just the initial planning of a trip, like who to bring and all that stuff, have along. And then Deb's going to talk about the trip contract, which I think you sent a copy to people.
PDF, yeah.
Yeah, okay, and hugely important. Alan's the techie guy that loves to do spreadsheets, and he's doing that. And then I'm back doing safety and decision making. And those that don't know, my middle name is What If. So what if this, what if that? If we go, can we get back? Okay. And then Lynn, perfect topic for her, prepping, packing, loading, and equipment. She's just amazing what she can fit in a kayak. And has lots of tips. She's done lots of backpacking trips and kayak trips. And then Morley loves to play. And so he's going to show you how to build a shower. And he makes awesome fires and likes playing with pulleys for caching. And then John's talking on camp activities. John's another playboy.
Playboy.
Okay, so that's what it is. So here we go. So how many of you have done a camping trip longer than a week? Okay. How many up to 2 weeks? Okay, that really thinned it out. So you're allowed to be here. If anybody was over 2 weeks, you could go home. Okay, so you know, a lot of this you can think, gee, I already know that. But if you take home a couple of points that are helpful, then our evening is successful, in my opinion. So the logistics with going past a week. Oh, I hit this next slide too soon because it's a good one. So 1 week of food is one thing, 2 weeks of food is another thing, and then when you're up to almost 3 weeks of food, you got a lot of stuff to put somewhere, and you have to have food that's going to last. And do you want fresh food or do you want all, you know, dehydrated? So, let's see. So, it's a lot of stuff, and I wanted this one up here because this is not a pointer thing.
No, it doesn't.
No
Okay,
pointer.
So when you're carrying a lot of food, you have, I think, 3 choices. You can use the bear vaults or bear barrels, and we have one there for people to look at, and there's a smaller size, shorter size of that, and then there's a black one that's got, it's a different sort of system, but it's the same thing, it keeps bears out. And now I'm reading it doesn't necessarily keep all bears out. The other option is to cache it. And Morley will be talking about the sling system, and he and Lynn are really good at that stuff. What I have done up till now, and I'm about to convert to the bear caches for these longer trips, is I had permission from my buddies to store my food in my kayak. Because all that food, to hump it up, and then bring it down to have a cup, you know, like whatever. So I'm going to change over, so then the stuff those have to fit into my kayak, so I might be buying a new kayak. So we'll see. But it is a nuisance with having to take food up to the campsite, and then you have to take your boat down to the water for a day paddle, and then load the food. I have to put the food to the boat on a day paddle. Okay, so whereas the bear caches can stay on shore, and the up in the air ones can stay on shore. Water's always an issue unless you're just going for a few days. And of course, the longer you're out, the more homework you have to do on where you're going to find water. And I'm just going to show you that. That's the back of Alan's boat. And you notice when I mentioned fresh, that's the whole pineapple at the top.
When do you come?
He also can't capsize.
Alan does carry the large gird tent, tarp, and the ropes and stuff, and a couple big poles. But yeah, we won't go into detail. And then bathing and hygiene, Lynn is going to cover that, because the longer you're out, what do you do? And when you can't handle your own smell in the tent, what do you do? If you're sharing a tent, it's worse. Injuries and overuse, the longer you're out and the longer you're paddling, the more likely something can go haywire there. And then personalities. It's a big one, the longer you're out, okay? So how many people to ask? There's some things to think about. Well, that sometimes water is not easy to find, and sometimes you actually get handed drinking water. Okay. And so, how many people to ask? Now, who came to Doug Alderson's talk recently? Anyway, some people, any more than one is too many. They don't want to be responsible for anybody else but themselves, and that's fine. Some people like two, often couples will practice and train together, and they're very comfortable with their skill level. Some people like 3, 4. I personally like 4 to 6, but no more than 6, because when you're looking for a campsite, this is a nice campsite where we can all spread out. But when you get where you've got solstice tides and there's not much beach, guess what? You're tripping over people's tarp lines. So you have to sort of like each other. Okay, so that's what limits me to the 6 myself. And I like mixed company, like half boys and half girls, Married, single doesn't matter to me, because we're just paddling buddies. So I do think usually that, the partners for letting their other halves go and come on trips with me. Another thing is, with your destination is, that can dictate who you have along. So if I'm going to do a short Gulf Islands trip, I can invite my sister, who's a fair weather paddler, and she's got really good forward stroke, but she doesn't like current and she doesn't like waves, and that all works out. Would I take her around Cape Scott? No. So sometimes the destination where you want to go will help you decide who to ask along. Do they have surf landing skills, rock water rescue skills, and can you handle a 15, 20 nautical mile paddle with a loaded boat? So there's that. And the destination people are interested, maybe people have been there that you would like to ask and they don't want to come. So, it's going to be somewhere they like to go. And again, I'll mention the personalities and interests. Different people have got different interests, and you have to respect that. But, it's nice to have some in common. So we have singing, and some people like to sing every evening. And some of us go for a walk. There's photography, hiking. It's beautiful. That was Calvary Island. Oh, God, that was beautiful. And then Morley's an archaeologist, so he was showing us an old village site, and he can explain stuff, which is really kind of cool. Or, that one's darker there, but it looks better up there. You might just want to sit back and contemplate, work on your journal, read, or just contemplate nothing, like meditate. So it's like honoring people, leave them alone. You might take a picture of them, but leave them alone, or you might do things together. So that's all things to think about. There's skill level, my sister wouldn't be happy in there, but Morty wanted more, so there we go. And, people have to be able to handle conditions on some of these exposed trips. And so it's encouraging people, like the first biggest trip I did was around Cape Scott, and had my hand held by my buddies, and one of my requests, well, it was actually like, if you don't have this, you're not going request, is we did surf landing training over in Tofino with Eve and Patty. Some of us once, some of us twice, and some people did it 3 times. And we also did a rough water session in Enterprise Channel with rescues. And so we felt very comfortable with all that, doing that trip. And I'm not comfortable taking people that can't show me that they've got those skills. And sometimes it's hard to show that around here. Just because somebody says they've got 30 years experience doesn't mean that they can handle the conditions. So once you've got your group, you then, this is leading into Deb's talk, you organize a planning meeting several months, many months ahead, okay, to do all the logistics. And Deb will now talk to you about the trip contract and all her bits. I should say, any questions you can ask as we go along. Good.
So I'm going to focus on the pre-trip get-together. Now, how many people have used a trip contract before they've gone on a trip? Formally, anything on paper? Okay. So, I think a pre-trip meeting is really important. I'll tell you that about 20 years ago, I went on a trip with 2 different paddling buddies. One brought a couple of friends and family along, and halfway through the trip, my female paddling buddy said, I want to get out of here, you're coming with me. And I said, oh no, I'm not. So I was really on the horns of a dilemma, and that's not a great place to be. So let's think about how we can solve some problems in advance. I think one of the benefits of a pre-trip planning meeting is making sure that everybody is clear on what the expectations are for the trip, aware of what other people are thinking about how the trip is going to go for paddling and for camping. I think it's really important, especially if people have not all paddled together on an extended trip. So think about that in advance. Getting people together physically rather than just emailing back and forth, I think is a good way to put things down on paper, ask difficult questions. So in your email packages, you should have a copy of the skills trip contract. And contract might sound like a bit too formal a word. Really, it's an agreement, just talking things through in advance so that everybody's really on the same page. Now, one of the things, or a few of the things that are, after you've got the names in here, there's a list of safety equipment. So Alan, did you want to pop up and show some of the safety and repair equipment, or do that later? We'll do that later. And one thing that I'd add, in addition to having at least 2 first aid kits, a repair kit for boats and things, are carry straps for the kayaks. Especially if you've got long carries, having those straps, you can just be an inch off, have your kayak an inch off the ground and just slide along, saves a lot of back injuries. So collaborating on the trip contract helps answer the who, what, when, where, how much, what if kinds of questions. And you can also gather information from that meeting about a float plan, which Alan will be talking to you a bit more about as well. And it's an opportunity to assign homework. So you can divide up the tasks so that people can make any overnight bookings you need for hotel rooms or ferry travel as soon as possible. And then you can also check on where do we park our vehicles, contact details for any water taxis, updates on campfire bans, and things like shellfish closure. So doing the homework. So I'll talk just in general about a few sections of the trip plan, the Uber plan or the agreement. And as I mentioned, I think sometimes it can be just a handshake, or you might just want to put it down on paper. So especially for those difficult things like how much is this going to cost, who pays, for example, if one of the group equipment gets wrecked. On our last trip, Alan's big guide tarp ripped. What do we do? Well, we decided in advance that we'd share expenses, so if if he didn't get it covered under warranty, we would have divvied up the cost of repairing that. Who pays for the transportation? And we usually work out that the driver doesn't have to pay for gas. So things like that, working it out in advance, I think is a really good idea. And so using the trip contract tool really makes a difference. I think it can make a difference between a trip from hell or something that's really successful. And it worked well on our 17-day trip around the north coast as well as on the mid coast. So I won't touch on every box since many of the points from the trip contract and the float plan are covered by other folks. I'll just highlight a few things, such as trip goals. Is this an expedition? We're going to stop and smell the kelp, which now Alan does. He actually takes the most pictures on our trips. And quite a contrast from when he did the 75-day trip to Alaska where they were just plowing along. So now I think it's a little bit more relaxed and sort of fun. On the Hakai trip, one of our goals, for example, was to learn more about the First Nations presence on the mid-coast. So we got to learn about culturally modified trees, clam gardens, village sites, what else? Fish traps, things like that, because we had Morley the archaeologist along. So it really added a lot of value to the trip. Trip dates with, as somebody mentioned, as people get retired and busier, it's really hard to coordinate dates. And one of the cautions we have is don't plan too tight a timeline. And one of the rules Alan came up with is to allow 1 day for contingencies or for weather for every 5 or 6 days that you think you'll be traveling around the water. So just to give yourself a little bit of chance to get back when you think you're going to get back. And really be clear too if there's any wiggle room. For example, on our trip from Port Hardy around to Cole Harbour, there was a real temptation once we got into Quatsino Sound to just head for the barn. And so we had to have a little chat and say, okay, there's all of Quatsino Sound here, there's lots of places to explore, can we just stick with our original plan, which we did. And we had some pretty magical days looking at the intertidal as well as the caverns of Mahata Creek. The proposed route. Now, will you be moving every day? Will you spend a couple of nights at least in each campsite, or will you base camp and do day trips? So, looking at what you can find out about launch sites. Is it going to be docks or ramps, good landing and launching spots? And what about proposed campsites? Find out if they're going to be large enough, as Jenny said, for the number of people, the tents and the boats that you have to put safely for the evening. And also factoring in high tides around the solstice and full moon. And here again, local knowledge is invaluable. Talk to people that have kayaked there, even sailed there, or power boaters. They'll have a lot of knowledge that's not in the charts, not in the books. So I think you can't go wrong. And I think many of you went to Rob Zacharias' talk on Clayoquot and probably got a wealth of information because he's been there so many times. So that's great. Another thing to look at is expected sea conditions. And this is where you do your homework. Alan will be talking a bit more about weather and highlighting some resources you can use. What's the sea state? On the west coast, you're going to have surf and swell. The terrain, you expect it's going to be a little rougher around headlands. So find out what you can as far as currents go. On our trip, the couple of trips that I've been on in the San Juans, they just seem to defy the current atlas. The arrows say they're going to be currents going this way, and no, you just can't imagine why. You're paddling at 6 knots for a while, and then you're down to 0.8 because the flood has switched. Okay, so see what you can find out in advance, and talk about how far you're going to go each day. Something you can agree on, the maximum number of miles and the time it would be on the water. So it's going to make a difference if you're paddling point to point or noodling the shore. And of course, you're only going to be able to go as fast as your slowest paddler. So is 10 nautical miles a day a good range to shoot for? Or think about getting on the water to stay away from the wind and heat, which heat might be more of a factor if you're down in the tropics. What time do you want to arrive at camp? Do you want to be sitting there with a beverage in your hand watching the sunset? Or are you going to be arriving at dark? So talk about what's comfortable for people. And as we talked about on our trips, it takes about 2 hours to put camp up and strike your camp again. So 2 hours to set up, 2 hours to take down. If you wanted to move every day, that's a big chunk of time. So you plan to paddle a little bit longer one day so that you can have some layovers. So think about that. The skills contract says environmental guidelines, and to me the better term would have been what's people's comfort zone. So Jenny talked a little bit about skills, knowing who has what skills, having expectations of surf launches and landings, as well as rough water rescues. So find out what people are comfortable with and agree on the maximum conditions. I've heard one of our Wednesday paddlers say, I can paddle in those conditions, but I don't want to. So honor people's requests around that. Just as a guideline, Paddle Canada Level 2 suggests that you might paddle in winds 12 to 19 knots, current less than 3 knots, combined seas less than 1 meter, surf less than 1 meter. So is that a guideline that your group would want to work with? Talk that through. Jenny's going to talk a little bit more about leadership and decision making, but ask those questions in advance. Who's the leader? Who has veto power? How are decisions made? So don't assume that just because someone has the highest Paddle Canada certification that they want to be the leader. Remember on the trip a few years ago, we had someone who complained about always doing the day trip planning and doing the navigating and finding the waypoints. Now, if we talked that through in advance, I think everybody would have been happier. So ask those questions and get it out. We found that consensus decision-making might take a little bit longer, but you don't want to miss out on anybody's point of view. And I think we've always made better decisions because we've heard from everybody. And if someone's not comfortable, we don't go. And what I'd also add to the trip contract is fun and celebration. And you'll hear from John why that's important to include. So I think planning can make your trip more relaxing and more enjoyable as well as safer. And just imagine, one day you too could be giving a presentation for Siska about the adventures you've been on. So that's trip contract and planning meeting. And we've got some things here if you want to come up later and talk more. Who's next?
Thanks, Deb.
Helen.
What? Oh, it's up.
We're so well rehearsed.
We are, yeah.
Good job.
Winging it. How's it going so far? Okay? Too fast, too slow? Feel free to ask questions like in the middle, because we don't have anything really planned. Happy to address your concerns. We want to leave time after we're finished for lots of questions, maybe get into things a little more deeply. What I was given was put a mugshot up on each of these first slides of our sections. So I was given the sort of technical side. Not that I'm an expert, but I have messed around with a bunch of stuff, and I want to probably go through it fairly quickly. Partly because you could go into this forever, I could, and that would not be interesting for most people. And there's a lot of details there, and I'd be happy to mind the way. Oh, I'd be happy to go on. Talk to you about it at a later point or afterwards in questions if you want any more details. But I thought probably to sort of trip lightly through things might be a good plan to begin with. So to start with, you know, not so high tech, charts. I mean, it seems straightforward. Jenny's put one up over there, she'll be talking about later, because we all know what marine charts look like. But charts are absolutely essential from a guy who really likes electronics. And you know, there's a bunch of them out there. I don't know if you're aware of it, the Canadian Hydrographic Service has them at different levels of detail. There's a million of them out there. When we went to Alaska a couple of years ago, you know, you had to get a ton of charts. So we made some decisions about how much to invest in the whole chart thing and how to carry them and all the rest of it. And I was a little skeptical as to whether paper charts were that critical. And I tried, you know, taking it off my chart plotter and my digital program and this. You know what? The digital doesn't measure up. It's so difficult to use out there when you're on the water. Paper charts are much better. And the level of detail certainly helps. So, you know, depending on where you're going, try to get a really good set of charts for that area. Try to keep them dry, so you don't have to pay another $23 for every one of them. But, you know, it's worth it. And as I say, there's a ton of them. This is the approach level, so that's, I think, 1 to 20,000 or something. This is the, you know, approaches to Oak Bay, and there's lots of detail around that area, and they have them in other parts of the coast as well. They're out there, and they're there because mariners need that level of information, and you can even then infer things from a chart, like the shape of a bay might give you a sense that this might be a good place to land, that kind of thing. It's harder to do that on a digital device. Charts are important. In Canada, they charge for them. In the United States, they give them away. But they don't have paper charts for giveaway. It's all digital. And so you can download and print NOAA charts. And you know, they're just over there. So if you haven't paddled in the San Juans, it's very close by. You can spend some happy paddling days over there and get the charts from NOAA or from online. You can purchase them and have them delivered to you as paper charts, or you can print them out if you want to create your own. So lots of charts. You can see that they don't bother with our coastline, but they kind of nudge up to it at Prince Rupert and down here in Victoria. So good to know that there's lots of good paper charts out there. Another great resource, if you aren't already a member, I highly recommend that you become a member just to support this organization. The BC Marine Trails is a terrific idea of having good information about places to camp along the coast. They hope to have them about 10 nautical miles apart eventually throughout the coast, and to have a sort of a whole system of marine trails that people can know about. And all those little circles are campsites and places of interest along our coast. And this is an interactive map if you haven't used it. You don't have to pay. You can go onto the site, just say, you know, the disclaimer, accept that, and you can delve in and see exactly what they have in these various areas. And there's a lot of detail. This is at Cape Scott, and this is talking about Guy's Bay, a little pop-up there, and lots of information about the nature of the landing or number of tent sites and that type of thing. And because they're using Google Maps, you can drive, you know, delve right in and see the shape of things, and you get a lot of good information. So BC Marine Trails, you know, again, it's not a paper chart, can't take it with you really very easily, but it's great to have, it's great for planning. So I highly recommend that. The BC Marine Trails, you know, is really the initiative of a bunch of really good paddlers and visionaries out of Nanaimo, but it's been adopted now, and our club here supports them annually, and we have, I guess Fred Picholsky is now our representative. He used to be you, Susan, for some time. So a really good organization to support anyway, but great resources if you're planning a trip. So this is probably why I get the reputation of doing a lot of detail work, because it satisfies me if I can kind of get everything in one place. This is an Excel spreadsheet you won't possibly be able to read, but what I try to do for every trip I've been on is to sort of imagine what the trip will be day by day. And where you see a green bar, that's what I call a weather day. So it's like, I think every 6 days or thereabouts. This was our trip to Alaska. And the yellow days were planned layover days. So we had some slack built in, even though it was basically a traveling trip. And each day I would have a departure and destination, and then I'd note what the tides were in that area, and the currents, if there were any currents to know about. and as well the sunrise and set time, so you had an idea what your paddling day might look like. And I was using that to estimate also the numbers over the far side of meals for dehydration. So it was just a kind of a general thing. This goes on for about 3 pages when you have a long trip, but it's just a way of pulling the information together. You know, you may not do this. You may deviate, great. You know, you're making decisions on the fly, but then at least you have something to work from. And you're not having to carry maybe all sorts of resource books that, you know, might be hard to accommodate. You've got a lot of information with you in one place. So it's certainly possible to do this. It takes a bit of time to pull it together into one place, and then you've got you know, kind of an itinerary in your mind that you're working with. Yeah.
Sorry, would you mind repeating the actual
Elements?
names of the colors? Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just the day of the trip. This is the date and the departure and arrival points here, and then what I've got here are the number of miles between the departure and arrival. So what we were trying to do on this trip was to average about 15 miles a day, nautical miles. And we knew some would be longer. You can't always aim at that, and some would have to be shorter, and because of campsites or weather or whatever. And then in this area, I had the currents and the tides that were in that area that we were planning to paddle. And it would take, you know, the currents and tides. In Canada, we don't have too many current stations, actually. Down here, there's, Race Rocks and Acton Pass, and then there's secondary stations. In the United States, they have current stations everywhere. In the San Juans, there must be a dozen. And in Alaska, you know, there's dozens in Southeast Alaska. So they have invested in the technology in the United States. Canada, not so much. So what that means is, if you're paddling in our waters, you probably won't have too many current stations to think about. Like in Cape Scott, there's a current station for there, but you know, what happens when you're 50 miles away either side? Well, you know, it may not be the same current. The tides, there's much more specificity around tides. And these things are all in the tides and current tables books that the Hydrographic Service puts out. So, you know, it's known information, or you can find it online and just pull it out, pop it in there, and then you've got it where maybe you need it. And then the other things I had were, I was keeping track of the moon phase just to get an idea of the, you know, where the tides were moving in the paddling day. So if you've got, you know, a longer day available to you because of the way the current's moving, and you're trying to go with the current if at all possible. And finally, what I got there? Oh, I guess the sunshine. So yeah, the sunrise and sunset periods. So you just have an idea. And basically, further north you go, you get more light in the wind in the summertime. You know, it's basic information, but you don't want to be surprised by it when you're out on the trail. Anything special? I just had another column for any unusual features that might come up. There were a few places that we've come across that are certainly worth noting a second time. You know, oh, let's remember that you know, the tide flows out and the river comes this way, and you get some interesting water here. So, is that good?
Yeah, thanks.
Now, Debbie mentioned the float plan. So this is an example of one that, this is from our Cape Scott trip that some of us did. You know, it's pretty basic. If you haven't done one, it's easy to do. Float plan is for people at home to tell them, you know, where you are. And hopefully you've got something with you that you can communicate. The descriptions of your, you know, kayaks and any gear that's going to be noticeable if you are. There's some recovery necessary for your vehicles, you know, where they are, what dates you're expecting. You may be out of contact. You know, maybe you're going to get out an emergency message, but you know, we hope that everything's going to be good. But this is in case things go wrong, what your emergency contacts need to know. And if the Coast Guard is aware that you're in a difficult situation, they'll contact your emergency contacts. This gets a little bit towards something later what I'll talk about with the InReach and Spot and other communication devices that you can use to sort of add to your safety on the water. But this is a very good one. It's quite simple. You know, piece of paper or something on your computer maybe. Leave it with, you know, your family or your friend, and they know what's what. It's a good way to keep in touch, and it's also a good way to kind of keep in touch with each other. GPS. I think I brought some. So I'm sure everybody has looked at stuff like this before. This is the Etrex 20. It's about $200, I think, maybe less. sad to say, I've gone through a few of them because they are not completely waterproof, as it turns out. But it's a very good device and a hardy device, and it's a great complement, I would say, as an electronic device to the paper charts that I think you really do need to have when you're traveling out there. A lot more to be said about GPS. But the great thing is, you can tell exactly where you are. We've had conversations. I travel with a group of guys every year. You know, oh, that's definitely such and such an island. You know, we came by that thing, and so this is where we are. Well, just a second. Let's just pull over into a quiet spot, and we'll dial up the GPS, and this mark is actually we're not at that island. You know, we're at this other island that looks a lot like it. So let's just kind of know where we're going next based on where we are. GPS can do that, and it's easy to get confused when there's a million islands out there.
And your speed, Alan?
Sorry?
Your speed and currents?
Oh, yeah. So I use it to sort of see what's happening with the current, because I know my paddling speed, generally, touring paddling speed. And if I'm going faster than that and I'm not expending more effort, I've got some current help. If I'm going slower, then I know I'm up against it a little bit. Hey, Lloyd?
Alan, what do you do for batteries on a long trip? Do you do rechargeables, or you just stock a whole bunch of non-rechargeables, just bring as many as you think you might need?
That's right. Yeah, I do the latter. My experience with rechargeables, you'd have to recharge them, so you'd be looking for power to recharge anyway. These units take 2 AA batteries. They're not that expensive, AA batteries, and they're not that space consuming, so I take a bunch. You don't need as many as you might think. I had 3 food drops on the way to Alaska, and I sent myself, I think, 48 batteries at each food drop. Way too many. Way too many. I could have gone into business selling batteries. So anyhow, you get about two days. Did we figure, Jen?
I get
3
days.
3 days out of a couple of
Safely.
And you keep them on all day, every day?
on the paddling.
On the water.
Yeah.
When you're in the boat on the water, that's on.
On the water.
And it's also a great record, right? So you can keep your tracks, and then you can sort of look at that later on when you get home and plan the next trip. So GPS, if you don't know much about it, and this is what I said, I'm not going to expend a lot of time. This is a blue chart, digital chart that you can also buy from Garmin for another $200.
Are you mentioning waypoints using the GPS, or is that coming up later?
I can say something about it.
Well, it's on the GPS, it's just,
Yeah.
it's pretty important.
It is important. So one of the things you can do with GPS is enter in waypoints. So this is latitude, longitude, a point on the map that's digitally described. And back to the BC Marine Trails Network, they actually have sets of waypoints already on there. And if you join their association for, I think it's $40 or $30 or something, they make it really easy for you to download sets of them onto your device or your computer or your chart plotter program or whatever you're doing. So it's nice that way, or you can just put them in yourself, or you can, if you're in places, mark the waypoint where you are. Waypoints are useful because then, you have some places that you know where you are and when you're, what you're aiming for. You can actually track to them or back to them. Fog comes up or different difficult conditions that you can't see. It's really nice to have waypoints laid in. This I was just trying to show is, this is the north end of the island, so Port Hardy. He's talking to somebody about God's Pocket. So here's God's Pocket out here, and Port Hardy around it. It's close by. It's still nice to have waypoints. The fog can come in, weather can come down, and it's great even if you're sort of mostly following shorelines to be able to know where you are. So this is a Garmin map, and it operates with the GPS device, and on a computer at home you can use a chart plotter program that's a free download from Garmin now called Homeport. And you can then sort of plan out your trip, mark little routes on it, put your waypoints on there, make sure they're on your GPS so you have it when you're on the water, all that kind of thing. Certainly possible, but don't forget your paper chart.
So just back up for 2 seconds, sorry, so you were saying there's a free download from, so you buy the, is it syncing with this, or is it syncing with something else?
No, it syncs with this. And Homeport is like a program on your computer,
Got it.
and you just go to the Garmin website and download it. I actually have a page of resources that I've left at the back there on the table, and one of those is about this.
Do you have
Yeah, totally.
avionics on there, Alan?
No, I don't. That's an iPhone thing, I think.
It's an iPhone thing, yeah, Navionics, you can get all the blue charts, and they're $15 for all of North America, but they are battery pigs. So if you wanna use it for backup information, they're great. Otherwise, I wouldn't suggest running your iPhone to zero just for the Navionics.
Tony?
You might mention now what's pretty convenient, that isn't obvious, is that with the blue chart, you can mark all of the points where you want to record a bearing based on your route, all the headlands and beaches, lands, and everything, and you can download all those waypoints on your GPS, so they're already in your GPS.
Yep.
So you just do go-tos to go from point to
That's
point.
right. Much easier to work on your computer at home. You set it up in this and then download everything into your little device here. You can enter on this, but it's really
Tedious.
It's most useful when you haven't been somewhere before and you've marked the campsites,
Yeah,
because they can be tucked away.
you sure can. And speaking of campsites, Rob Zacharias, who's one of the guys I paddled with for years, he's a really good chart reader, like paper charts. He's a master at that. But even with really good chart reading skills, in a complicated area, you just can't quite see things well enough. If you've got a waypoint, which I did when we went to Alaska, I mapped all these waypoints, you actually can see, oh, you're aiming at this, Rob, because you can see the bearing and so on, but it's actually just beyond that on this islet over on the other side, and you can actually walk your way, paddle your way into a very specific zone with a digital waypoint. So it's great to have the combination. We were saying that it's good to have somebody who can read the paper chart, some of us need glasses, and somebody who can operate the GPS, and then together it's a great combination. So I won't take too much time on this at all, but just say that then when you get home, if you want to put your charts, your tracks rather, on top of various maps, you can do that. This is GPS Visualizer, which is it's a website where you can do that for free. You upload your track, decide what map you want, color it the way you want, and so you have a little pretty picture if you want to remember your trip. I want to talk about InReach. This is the one I use. There's also a Spot, is another satellite communicator device.
I'm sorry, just the last point on the GPS. Most people have been in dense fog now, which doesn't help you use the paper charts. If you have your waypoints preloaded in your GPS and your dense fog, you can identify where you want to go to and go to that bearing on your GPS, even if you can't see where you're going.
Yes, absolutely. And why I'm not going into much detail, I mean, you can take a whole course on GPSing, and then you need to work with it as well. But Mike Jackson, I think, often runs a course on GPSs each year, so it might be something, or people who've worked with them, or if you want to talk about it more afterwards, I'd be happy to. I don't want to bore everybody with that, but you're right on. I mean, it's great to have that ability. The InReach and the other devices like this are different than GPSs, although they have some of the same functions. It's a satellite communicator. This particular device works with the Iridium Satellite Network, which is a separate, privately funded network of satellites in geosynchronous orbits around the Earth. So this device, similar to a GPS, locates you by those satellites, though, not by the public satellite. And if you have a problem, because it is an SOS device, it will go via satellite to a place in Texas, and they will call the Canadian Coast Guard and say, we got an SOS beacon from this point. And they know who it's registered to and all that kind of stuff. So it's a safety device. It also is a communication device in the sense that these things can allow for text messages to be sent. Very brief, cryptic, I might say, text messages. Turns out Morley's kind of a master at the camel font approach to text messages, which is where you capitalize the first letter of every word and just run them all together. It looks weird, but you can actually read it if you pay attention. Rob Zacharias doesn't bother with that. He just, go back again, he just goes to, he makes up a message, then he takes out all the spaces, and then any letters he doesn't think you need. And people are scratching their heads. But it's a great way to communicate with people at home. And so that's a nice thing if you have somebody who's important, who's watching out for you, to have that communication. Another thing I'll mention, because we had this support from Mary Sutton, Jenny's sister, which is the weather available, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but is sometimes not specific to where you are. Big weather areas up the coast may not be where you are, but there are lots of good weather sites down here, for instance, that you can bring up in your computer and specify points. So we actually had Mary send us predict winds forecasts for certain points that we had predetermined with her based on where we were, and she knew where we were because she was following our little messages each day. And we had way better forecasting knowledge then about what we would likely encounter in a given day than we would if we were just listening to the Coast Guard continuous marine radio weather broadcast, which we also did, but it just had added to it. So this allowed us to do that. She would send us as a text message the predict wind forecast for the next 2 days. And we'd say, oh, yeah, it's gonna be good tomorrow, not so good the day after, maybe we should go tomorrow, you know, that kind of thing. And it helped us make good decisions, I think. So a very good device. These things are about $300, I think. And what they do is you get a plan that works for you, so many messages and tracks and things. And then when you don't need it, like right now, you hibernate it, they call it. And it costs $3 a month, and so a cup of coffee a month, and it just sits there for you, and your data sits. You also have the ability through that to have, you can pair your smartphone, any old smartphone, with these devices, and then you use that to put things into it, and people will tell you their experience with that, but it's a bit of a skill thing, but you get into it, and then the information goes from your device through the inReach to the satellites, and gets set up to a website or page that gets set up for you. So that's a track, and each of those blocks are messages that were sent by inReach at different points, and the messages can be big or short or whatever it is that you want, and people can follow that, and they have some sense of where you are. So all good information, all good technology, I'd say, very worthwhile exploring. You don't need it. You do need a few key things. I keep saying paper chart. And the other one is a VHF radio. You absolutely have to have a VHF radio. It's still the standard for communication, regardless of all these other things. It gives you access to the Coast Guard continuous marine weather. And that takes a little getting used to. You can follow their pattern, and I think I have a slide about that. Because they make their continuous broadcast in a certain sequence in different areas. They'll go through, the buoys, and then the weather, the light stations, and this, and then there's the technical synopsis and so forth. And eventually they'll get probably the forecast you've been waiting for, and you're trying to write it down, remember it. If you miss it, just listen to it again. It keeps on coming, and so you've got another 10, 15 minutes until it gets back to where you want it to listen.
So
the
now,
VHF radio is critical.
have you ever been in an area where you couldn't get the weather?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Did they actually tell you where those are?
Not so much.
That's the local knowledge again.
Yeah. There's some spots where it hasn't been great, and I know that they've changed the main stations. I don't think they changed the repeater stations that are what's pushing that out there. And you've sailed up and down the coast, Victor, so you know that there are some spots that are
Well,
different.
we have an antenna at the top of the mast, so
You have a
the
big one.
handheld is quite a different thing.
Yeah, so what you often see people in small groups with these radios, kind of walking down the beach and holding it up, or getting up on a little height and so forth, kind of like a cell phone in a poor cell phone coverage area. But yeah, generally you can find it in most places.
I think the thing with Cape Scott that we knew from somebody that had been there was that the closest we could get Cape Scott weather was from Prince Rupert,
Yeah.
which wasn't very useful. But we could contact the lighthouse keepers up the top of the hill above us, and they were used to having kayakers ask, because they could go online on their computer and get the latest for us. But we knew that before we went on the trip, and that's, when you say local knowledge, we talked to somebody that had been there. So that's not that we couldn't hear on the radio, it's that there wasn't anything for the area we were in.
So how do you contact the lighthouse?
It was on another station, one of the
Yeah, on one of the.
stations, I can't remember the
Just
number.
say,
Go
you
with
know,
channel they're on.
and then
Yeah,
go on
they
the
have a
computer and
channel.
just read it up to us.
Yeah.
Write it down.
Or you can walk up there. That's where we're getting that water that
Yeah,
Jenny
yeah.
said was all clear. And actually, the lighthouse people, very helpful. They're actually really pleased to see people. They must be kind of loners to have a job like that, but they seem to be quite happy to have visitors. And the Cape Scott one gets a lot of them because of the hiking group up there. And they'll spend some time talking to you, giving you some information about what they've heard from mariners and so on. Good to know. So VHF radio, I just wanted to mention, and I'll get around to power, but I've gone through a few of these radios as well. I know probably other people have too. And so nothing's impervious to salt water. I got this one because it has a USB port for recharging, which is nice at home. And also my charging system on a trip uses USB, so I don't need batteries. So this one doesn't use batteries. But if you leave that little port open, you know, and take it underwater, it's dead right away. So you have to be so careful with that. Yeah.
I discovered the hard way with my VHF radio. It's the same with my GPS. That there are two standards for waterproofness.
Yes.
And it's a much higher standard with the rechargeables. The minute you go to the AAs, AAs, AAAs, whatever, the minute you go to that, you lose about 50% of your waterproof rating.
Interesting.
So it's good to have it in another container.
Yeah, I know that Jenny now keeps hers in a case, don't you,
Yeah.
Jenny?
Don't put that in my GPS.
GPS,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
a
I've
different
started to
standard.
use that for my GPS too. A little bit harder to see and operate if it's inside a, you know, a flexible casing, but it's gonna keep it.
Until it wears a little hole in it somewhere, and then the water goes in, and then it stays in,
Yeah.
it's not drying out.
Oh, gee.
And so then it
Point.
rusts.
Yeah, it happened to you?
Oh yeah, several times.
All right. Power. So, you know, people have different solutions for power. This is the one I used, and I noticed that Morley has something similar. This is made by Anker, A-N-K-E-R, but there's a bunch of different ones. It's a power pack, essentially. And this little, you know, when you charge it up, will charge up your cell phone, because remember I'm using my smartphone to, you know, as an in-reach input device, and it will charge it up 5 or 6 times from 0. So it's got, I think this is like 14 or 15,000 milliamp. And so it's pretty good. I take 2 of them on a trip, and I find that I can get about a week out of one of them. But we kind of ran out of power, didn't we, last time? And we were lucky enough to find a place where we could charge up, so we might have to buy another one. We're going to keep going on these long trips. This is great to have power on the go, and more devices you have, the more you need that. If you don't have so many, then you probably don't. Or just need it from somebody in the trip. Oh yeah, and then, you know, if you want to get fancy, you can do a little website for your group and get everybody kind of pumped up to begin with. This is the group, this is where you're going. It's dead easy to do websites now. If you've never done it, no problem. They've got a, you know, a sort of a 1, 2, 3, and bang, you're online. And then you can link it up to your Facebook account. I actually don't have one, but my wife does. And took a page off that. And the good thing with Facebook, so easy to upload photos. So if you go somewhere where you have Wi-Fi access, you can throw some photos up that you've been taking, probably a lot of, and just let people know where you are and how it's going. And because everybody's taking pictures, I take a lot. Jenny takes very good ones. I just take a lot. We end up wanting to share those afterwards. And a good way to do that is Flickr is one such site. There's lots of others you probably have used, like iCloud, the various cloud services, servers out there, Google's, you know, Drive and so forth. And you can put that up and just let everybody put their pictures in. And then you can share them, take a look at what people got and have taken, and you can make your own presentation, storyline, whatever you want afterwards. I wanted to show this. If you don't have one, Jenny, did you bring these along? Any chance?
No.
Okay. But we have, through the club, these sheets. They're double-sided, and they're put out by Environment Canada, I guess. And this is the Marine Weather Guide for the Pacific area. You see the lines there and the diagram, and it's showing you where the weather forecast areas are and where the various buoys are that are talked about. You know, this one and that one that are way out, Explorer and Buoy and so on. Where are those things? Well, they're like 50 miles offshore, and it's a lot about shipping. Of course, Environment Canada is mostly trying to keep shipping safe, so kayaks are along for the ride, I guess. But this is the detail about how the forecast proceeds, how they go through it on a continuous basis, and you can see the sequence in which they are talking about various things. This is the back end of that same piece, so it got a sort of a bigger version for the southern island where we live, and very helpfully they actually have, you know, what about those wind warnings? What does that mean? How fast is it? You know, what do I really need to worry about? That kind of thing. So this is really good information. That's free. I think we'll have some, probably,
Is it online?
it is online, yeah.
I just forgot to bring, I got heaps from some government.
Yeah, one of our presenters.
Teaching,
Yeah.
but it's online.
It's online, you can print it out, and if you write in, they'll send you, or contact them, they'll send you.
That's great to take on your trip when you're learning, or even when you're past learning,
Yeah.
because you can just have that and follow along, and then when it gets close to your area, you go, or you see the names of the areas, and then you get your pen ready to write it all down.
Yeah, and I've just plasticized, laminated, you know, you can get that done at Staples if you don't have a laminator, but that way you don't have to worry about it kind of shredding or whatever, and nice to throw in your bag or kayak. And this, was asked to just mention this one, which is also available on, actually it's only available online. It's a very comprehensive volume, 150 pages. If some people may know about a book called The Wind Blew All
The
Ways.
wind came always over.
And that's about the winds in this area, how complicated it is, written by meteorologists from Environment Canada some years ago. This is essentially an update, but they're not producing it as a written document anymore, as a printed document. And so you just get it online, and I guess you can print out pages if you wanted or something, or read it online. So it's a tremendous resource, very technical in places, but fairly readable as well. And of course, as we know, weather is endlessly interesting and very complicated, and we do our best. It's just going to go on to Jenny. So before we go on to Jenny.
These are yours, you better.
Oh, okay, not yet. I want to just talk a bit about, is that what you want me to do?
No, yeah, sure,
Lynn,
no.
talk about the.
Sure,
stuff,
you just,
or-
yeah, part of the
Or
trip,
later with part of your stuff, or what?
you might as well do it now. Part of the trip contract usually is deciding who's bringing what. Everybody doesn't need to bring a full repair kit. So Alan is master of repair kits, so he's gonna briefly tell you what he brings along for the group.
Well, I bring along peanut butter jars. This is really good information, I'm sure, Mickey. See these little white things in here? These are really thin styrofoam plates. I get at Dollarama, like 200 for $3 or something like this. And I cut them and put them into the tops. And when you do that, and you just cinch those suckers down, you can throw this in the water and let it float around. They become watertight. If you don't do that, they will not be watertight, I can assure you. But anyway, they're watertight now. And I use them then to hold gear, because I can't remember what I put in, like, bags that aren't clear. And I don't have many that are clear. So I just have a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to say what it is individually. I just want to say that I have repair things for kayak. I got a repair kit from Nimbus, because I have a Nimbus Telqua high volume. They have a repair kit they'll sell you over the internet for, I don't know, $30 or something. It's got, you know, lots of nuts and bolts, and I haven't used most of it, cable, but I've used some of it, crimping and things, and lots of pieces that might be useful if your Nimbus runs into problems. I'm sure they're available for other kayaks or just general as well. Put yourself together one. This is not particularly watertight, but I put it where it's not going to get too wet. You know, all sorts of little bits and pieces that might be useful if you run into problems. Have some cold cure. If you have a hole in your kayak, it's, you know, you need to make up a cold cure epoxy on the spot. This will do the job for you. This is a stove and a stove repair kit. That's a secondary stove. Lynn has 8 stoves. If you start to think I've got a lot here, I'm still a junior. These are little clamps I use for my gasket repair system. This is a rig that I just copied off the internet from Cocatat for replacing the neck gasket, and I use just a bottle of the right dimensions for the wrist gasket. There's another course on this coming up, I think. Tony and Larry are going to show, you know, what they do and help you with it, I think. So that's a great skill to have, and people, you know, things rip when you're on a trip, so it's good to have that. This is just a bunch of stuff, shoe goo, you know, Leatherman, scissors, Aqua Seal, stuff. So I put it in these, and then I'm kind of fairly easy. Oh, I got that here. Where did I put that other stuff? You know, oh, I'll put it in my bike bag. You know, try and pull it back together in time for the trip. Here's some extra gaskets.
Where's the duct tape?
Yeah, I've got duct tape. I sort of cut that down so that it's not so much. take an end of a roll and squish it, and I've got a different type of tape over here. So lots of tape and lots of little pieces. This is, oh yeah, if you've heard Rob Zacharias talk about all the tent poles he broke, you know, these are ways to pull tent poles back together, little sleeves. If you break a tent pole, you can put this on the broken pieces and tape it away, and you got yourself a fixed tent pole.
And everybody else in the group too from
Yeah, well, Rob went through, I think it was 12 of them, you know, so he took pretty much everything we had on that.
Wow.
But he had particular bad fortune. Anyway, for everything you're taking, you know, it might fail. So your air mat, think about it, if you're out there and your Big Agnes sleeping pad fails, it's gonna be a long trip. You know, it's just not gonna be the same trip. Be nice to have a patch kit of some kind. Maybe duct tape would work, who knows? But just think about what it is you do, and if somebody's got a whack of stuff like I do, then just make sure they're coming, or.
And they're very telco high volume.
You don't all have to have it, but it's nice to have a little redundant stuff so that you can react. And I think that might be about it. Yeah, I think I'm done. Jen?
How did you keep your chart case dry? Because I know mine always leaks, and
Yeah.
I put duct tape on it. But when you're changing charts over all the time, you must use lots of.
You know, I'm open to suggestions on that one. I'll tell you, on the way to, well, if it's only wet in patches, you can dry out your charts, and you can sort of dry your case and all. But if it stays wet for days and days and days, as it may do, then just everything gets wet. And yeah, and then charts just come apart. And I have gone through quite a few chart cases. The ones that you buy, I think they're Seal something. Yeah, the ones out of Seattle. And I seem to rip those very quickly. So I think John has a more skookum one. I've been meaning to ask you where you got that. You know, maybe that's it, or maybe I'm just.
Or laminating beforehand, is that something you do?
You know,
sometimes?
it's hard to laminate a whole.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
It eventually leaks anyway.
Yeah.
I've laminated and
Sometimes
eventually
I
leaks.
photocopied it onto Bright in the Rain paper,
Yeah, that's it.
and then I flip them over, so I mark, so I put the charts, and I don't actually take the big chart then. I just take the sections I need and photocopy them onto the Bright in the Rain, because then it doesn't matter if they get wet.
Jenny has a great Right in the Rain story, maybe she'll tell us.
I tripped with somebody once who had them photocopied onto vellum paper too, which was really nice because they just cling to your deck. Her daughter happened to work at the place that did the vellum printing, so I'm not too sure how much that would run you. And if you needed a whole bunch, it might run you a whack. But get them wet.
I was told also.
Jenny, just as you're getting started, I'm gonna, because we've been chatting at you and stuff, I'm just gonna
Okay,
get
Tony's
you
got-
pass these down the road.
Alan, Tony's got
This
a,
is another part of my essential gear. Snickers. You wouldn't believe how important these things are. People would kill for these things.
He brings the big Snickers.
These are just juniors. I go mainline.
Yeah, well, that's
I will.
bananas and all the things.
Tony.
No, I just wanted to mention one thing. I was told by one of the guys at Trotac that like 3 or 4 months ago, they said in 3 or 4 months, the government was, well, it's not the government putting the charts out now. Whoever took it over, were thinking of putting them out laminated. So you could buy them laminated for $30 instead of 20, but they would last a lot longer supposedly.
Oh, that would be it.
So, but I haven't heard if they've actually done it yet.
Tony, and actually once you fold it, it's compromised.
Is it?
That was part of my question, how do you fold a laminate surface that doesn't crack?
Yeah.
You can buy road maps of that material that is
Yeah.
waterproof.
Yeah, yeah.
But they don't make any charts of that stuff yet?
Not about.
Wow.
That's great.
I also know somebody that's painted them with some sort of a varnish too.
Right.
And yeah, Gerhardt does that.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
But my chart case lasted many years until it finally split, and I've got a new one. And as long as you really get that pressed down and sealed, I can be upside down and all over the place and in the rain, and my charts don't get wet.
So which
Now,
one
if
is
they
that?
come out in the rain to change them over, that's a different story. And they're just the regular one that you get in NBC that's got the yellow cross.
Oh, yeah.
But if you don't snap it right down, it's like a Ziploc bag. If you don't get all the air, it's gonna leak.
Of course.
Trotax sells a big Ziploc type chart case as
And
well,
this
for
is-
very
this is-
cheap.
Yeah, this isn't a zipper one, this is actually the.
No, you have to
just
press it.
Press it
Yeah.
together. Yeah, and what I like is I can fold it, it's got plastic loops so I can clip it on, and I have my chart right here.
Oh, yeah.
It's not up there, it's right on my lap. And I can flip it out of the way, and it doesn't bother me if I fall in and stuff. And the other thing is, I think in the old days, you used to go to Arnold Blueprint and get like the whole chart done. Well, I've had no luck there in 15 years. They won't photocopy charts. So I go to Staples and fight with getting things in position, so, and I've just given up. What's $20? Really.
There are
it's
some
like-
people in town that will copy them.
Where? It's not legal.
I know,
Oh, really?
but there are some
Well, I'll
people.
talk to you later.
You're only doing a chunks of it, they'll do it.
Yeah, but then you can do that yourself.
Yeah.
But, people used to get the whole
Yeah.
thing done, and then they just, I guess it's not.
Will the ink last or not run in the photocopied ones? Because that's not a very
I
permanent
mean,
ink.
how often are you gonna use the same chart when you're on a trip? I mean, really?
On a trip, you don't use. It's down here.
I'll donate my old ones, because there's some places I plan not to go back to. Some places I'll go back again and again. Anyway, so, on to the next section. We're still doing okay for time, even though. Your friends for, you can't make fun of them. Okay, so where are we? Oh, there I am again. Okay, so this is the what if section. Okay, so I put that chart up there because that's the north end of Vancouver Island, Cape Scott, and then down into Proxima Sound. And safety and decision making. So Alan's great to have along because he does that all on one page thing so you can see. And a real life situation was when we were going to go around Cape Scott, we went to Nolan Point and God's Pocket, and then we were going to go up and around to Van Sittard and then back down. But we had to cross Newiddy Bar at a certain time with the current. And we were in camp, and I looked at his, day-to-day thing, and I thought, hang on, if we do that, we're going to be a day later when the current's going to be right. So we actually cut off going around the top end of Hygiene. And we made that decision as a group that night, and that was helpful because of Alan's thing. I'd been really sick and was trying to get well onto all the trips, so mea culpa for not really looking at that before we went, because Newiddy Bar is a biggie to time and rain. And we found out that when you dilly-dally and you're fighting flood, it's not fun to load a boat. It can take a long time to get to the beach. So the night before you're going to move, we get together after dinner and listen to the radio. Somebody finds the spot where you can hear the radio. Hopefully it's right low down, and you can have your chart out if you like, and you listen to the forecast as a group. Now, some of us listen in the morning, but we still do a group listen in the evening, and maybe even again in the morning if it's in an iffy situation. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. So you might have a plan to stay 2 nights, and the forecast is for winds of 15 knots, headwinds the next day, right? 15 plus knots, and as a group you decided you're not going to paddle anything more than about 10, 12 knots of headwind. So you were going to move that day, but the day after that, when you listen to the extended forecast, the winds are going to be light. So guess what? As a group, we decide we stay another day. And then you do some of those fun things. You contemplate life, or you go for a hike, or you go for a little day paddle or something. Okay, so listening to the extended really is helpful. So we've had that happen at Cape Scott, waiting for the weather to change. And it was a good decision. We went around Cape Scott and it was flat as a tack. So there we go. Then we planned to spend 3 nights at San Joseph Bay because there's the nice scenery and hikes and the walks, and, you know, it was a really nice place. And that one, we listened to the forecast on the second night, and the next day, which was gonna be our last day staying there, the winds were manageable, and there was a northwest front coming in, and the winds were gonna blast down that coast for the next several days when we listened to the extended. So guess what? Up at 3 in the morning to be on the water at daylight. And we made a run for Quatsino Sound. And I've got a picture near the end of us entering Quatsino Sound. And it had started raining about half an hour before we got in. The wind started to come in. And we got tucked in there, and it blew 20, 30 knots from the northwest for the next couple of days. But we were tucked in, and we could do day pass. So that's a timing thing. It's a consensus decision-making thing by listening to the forecast. Just, you know, Deb mentioned somebody, I can't remember what you said, but
Going for the
why
barn?
would you know, I hear stories of people getting caught in horrendous situations, or like Tony saying, you know, you can use your GPS in fog. Why'd you get caught in fog? I'd rather not get caught in fog than have to depend on my GPS. It's good to have, but my plan is to not have to do that. Okay. So that's the what if. So there's 2 real life examples. Yeah, so that's just a big picture of pointer here. Anyway, let me go to the next one. And there's a blow up, and I don't know if you can see, but I've actually done, I write on my charts. I don't care, it's $20. And it's, you know, it's for me. And then when I'm showing other people that want to do the trip, I've got this kind of detail on my chart. And so I've got water, Pebble Beach, easy landing, nice beach, protected from northwest wind. You know, so I've got little clues up the top one there. That was San Joseph Bay and waterfall. And we camped in behind a rock. There's a spot there, the waterfall, and a place to swim and wash your clothes. It's not written anywhere. But I can tell you if you're going to go there. Okay, so I personally write on my charts. I know Eve writes on his charts. He writes in big black felt pen. I guess maybe his eyesight is messed up. So there's that. And, you know, on the morning you leave, fog may slow you down. You know, you may have to delay a little bit. Oh, there's the entrance to Quatsino Sound. Okay, we just made it around the corner, but that was the forecast. We had the wind. We knew if the wind came up, it was going to push us, and so we weren't going to get into it. And so we made it around, and we tucked in. And worried about Eve and Patty for a couple of days because they were behind us, and they did a day coming downwind, 30-knot winds. Not my idea. Now, so on your rainy days, sometimes you can paddle because there's a protected area. Okay? Sometimes you decide as a group to go. You made the consensus decision to go. And everybody has to agree. Or you go for a hike and you smile and boy, that was wet. Yeah. It was wet. What else do you say? That's the north end of Calvert Isle. Best thing I've ever bought for a camping trip is gumboots. Sometimes we explore. There's another one with, that's Alan in his new to him rain gear. And there's Deb with her boots and umbrella. That's another good thing too. And that's a fish trap. And that's in Gale Passage where that boat that recently went under, that's where the oil was going. Yeah. We were pretty upset about that. So on bad weather days, guess what? So that actually, we did have an extra day in there with wind in Gale Passage, waiting to get out to the Mullen River, down to the Goose Group. This was our Bella trip. So we did a paddle in the protection of Gale Passage and went. It was low tide, and we had lots of fun, you know, fossicking around. It was wet. No, it was wet. So one of the best things besides the gumboots, or probably on top, better than gumboots, is this is the tarp that Alan carries on his back deck. And it's great psychologically because you've got a place to sort of get together as a group. Socially, it's great. You can cook and eat together. We share meals, most of us. It's a decision you make, you know, way back when you have your planning meeting, are you gonna do your own meals or share? But if you did your own meals, there's room under there. You could hold a pretty big party under there. So it's a great thing that he's invested in. And so that's the Tarp that tore, one part tore on our trip. And we as a group said to him, if this isn't covered, we're all paying for it. No.
But Mac just
What size
replaced
is
it, by the way.
that tarp?
Eh?
Mac just replaced it. They just said, yeah, it
It's,
shouldn't tear.
it's,
Here's a new one.
it's called a guide tarp, isn't it?
No, this one's called Super Tarp.
Super tarp.
It's about 20 by 20.
You know, Mac is really good that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, just said, explained, you know, this is what happened, the gust of wind ripped around the grommet, and they said, yeah, it shouldn't happen.
Just to make another point, you know, with whether to go or stay, as Deb talked about quite very well, was, you know, I like it where it's consensus, that you don't have a leader as such. That takes longer, but it works really well. And both longer trips we've done with most of the same group, we have not made a wrong decision. Okay.
Close. I was a bit pouty about not staying at San Jose Bay. As
We
Well,
did
I was
stay.
thinking also, you know, like camping out of the wind, and we got to the Goose Group, and Alan and Deb had been there before, and Alan was absolutely set we were gonna camp where he'd camped before. And I took Lynn and Deb aside, and I said, you looked at the direction of this wind, and we're gonna be right into that teeth of that wind. And he very reluctantly went with the group decision. And on the other side, still on a sandy beach, and guess what? We were out of the wind.
A really good decision. I just want to put that out there.
And I tell
Yes,
you,
Jenny.
if he pouts, I'm the pout queen. What am I called?
No.
Many
No,
thanks.
Don't go
What have you heard?
That's very good, because I'm up here, then I go here. Oh, God.
But that's the benefit of having consensus, as you said.
Yeah, anyway, that's good.
And Alan has never had a grumpy moment.
We finally got one out of him on day 20. I'm just gonna go back and make it easy here. So I think, yeah, so here, like say we were going from San Jose Bay, and we were gonna go right down around the corner. You can see it better on the chart there. And so we had to think, okay, if the weather came in early, where could we stop? So that's where you actually have note of that. Hopefully you've done it on your GPS before you've left home. Most of us have. And so you've got pull-out safety points if you have to pull out, or somebody's not well. You know, we do it on day paddles here, but you're in sometimes country you haven't been in before. So even Patty are really good for getting together to talk about the West Coast, because they've done it a couple of times. The Port Hardy area, I've got a friend up in Port Hardy that ran fishing charters. So, you know, lots of good information. Right here. Okay, I just gotta whip through these guys. By the way, that one in the fog was my sister. She's a good teacher. Anyway, so plan to stop and take bio breaks. So bio is like eating, drinking, and abluting. Okay? And you know, remember I said it rained a lot? This is so much that he's tired. That sun is actually out. He's probably drying off.
And he brought the recliner.
Yeah. That run we did from San Jose Bay into Quatsino Sound, I think I mentioned, we might not have been able to stop. 20 miles.
22.
22, okay. Yeah, you'd be picky. And so, we can think about it from an evolution point of view. That's a lot of hours, right? And if you want to keep hydrating.
Spell it out. Gotta pee sometime.
And in fact, he's not here, but somebody that goes on some of our trips. Now and again, he sort of goes off to the side. He looks like he's looking at something, but he's actually bringing out his pee bottle. But I've never seen a guy do that on the water.
Yeah, it's
and I was getting over towards him, and I finally worked out he had his skirt off. But anyway, so guys are okay, but women, I am not peeing in my $1,200 dry suit and then sitting in it. So I was thinking, what can we do? Who's being called?
I think it's on the table.
It's probably me. Well, I'm not answering it, so.
Well,
It's stop, it usually stops.
Anyway, I think it's
That's not vibrator, presumably.
Yeah, so what I ended up doing, and I got it for the 3 women on the trip, and 2 of us used them. Have you heard of Depends? Okay, they're a pull-on panty that's got lots of padding, and they put them on old people who are incontinent overnight. And it makes it easy because they don't wet the whole bed and stuff. Anyway, honestly, they felt fine. And so I totally relaxed about not worrying if we couldn't stop. Well, we were able to stop, but it's just that planning ahead before I left town. So I put 1 each in a Ziploc bag for each of the 3 girls. And 2 of us used them, but we didn't have to engage them. We just wore them. And they're actually very comfortable. My girlfriend's mother was using.
I guess you can't stop, but they have the zipper in them so that if you do stop, you don't have to take everything off. You have the zipper in the dry suit, so if you do get to stop, you don't have to take the whole dry suit off.
Oh, true, yeah.
You have the
Oh,
zipper
yeah.
in.
I mean, some people have only got the unisex zip, which is ridiculous because it's a boy's zip, and use that device, which some people say is a little bit tricky. I've got the rear flap, so I can open that up and pull things down, and as long as I can squat, I'm fine. And I can do everything. Okay, so number 1 and number 2.
Just not on the water.
You know, you could
Yes.
on the water.
Well,
If it's calm and you raft up and you know people really well, but you know, on the West Coast and you knew the storm was coming in, we're not stopping for that. Okay, so anyway, so that's enough on that. But you know, you have to think about things like that if you've got a long day and you need to stay hydrated, right? It's not good to stop drinking just to do something. A good idea that Michael Ailson had us do on the Cape Scott trip, and I really like it, and we've done it a little bit since, I think, is about every 3 nautical miles or every hour or so, the groups up. Just a short pause, you can have a little slurp. If you're hungry, you can have a little something to eat, but it's like just checking everybody's okay, have a look around at the weather, yep, things are going okay, this hasn't come in sooner or whatever. It's just a nice thing because, you know, people are a little bit over here, a little bit over there on the West Coast. Having said that, did you talk about crayons on the box? No. Okay, so Deb's got this wonderful visual. If you're going to cross an area like in the San Juans where there's a lot of boat traffic, like motorboat traffic, or you're doing a big crossing on a trip, we talk about being crayons in a box. Okay, so you want to be within visual here, not like back there, and you want to be within hearing. And with a group of 6, it's pretty easy. If somebody goes off track, you can easily pull them in. But it really is nice, and then if the weather is a bit iffy, everybody feels well supported. Okay, so crayons in the box is a really nice visual. I like to know where I am every second I'm on the water. I find it hard when people say, you know, what's that island over there? It's like they've been paddling here for 10 years. So here, I just brought this along as a picture. That's a picture of what goes on my deck now. I just worked this out. So my GPS is in a dry bag because I've gone through 2 that were waterproof that died. And people like Mike Jackson, Eva Patty, they all carry their electronics in dry bags now. And then, so when I'm traveling, this is in the middle of this, and this is off to the side. So, and I wear my glasses so I can see. So, I can bring up the waypoints where the campsite is. If we need to go to, I can do it on here. I've got my compass where I can see. If my compass is way up where they have the little thing for it, I can't see it, even with my glasses on. So you have to work out something that works for you. I'm just really anal, and I want to know what's going on, and then I can see it. I've kayaked on some trips with people that are a lot more techie than me, and that's not hard to happen. And they don't have a clue. Either their stuff's in their bag, or they don't have the, they can't see it. What use is that? You know, when you're heading into a campsite and it's rough, and you don't know where the campsite is quite. Yeah, so that's my little trick there. Take you in for the deck bag. And those deck bags aren't waterproof, by the way. They're damp-proof.
The other thing that's very helpful sometimes, if I'm taking some extra, like rain gear or things I don't know if I'm gonna need, or I have, at home I have one of those vacuum sealers for food.
Mhm.
You can also vacuum seal all your clothes or extra stuff. And so if you're taking some things you don't need for the first week, if you vacuum seal it sucks all the air out, and you can slide it in little places, and then once it's open, it's open. But, you know, it's a way of keeping, you know, and sometimes even if I've got things in my dry bag, because if it's pouring rain, even getting clothes out of your dry bags, and you're dripping on it. So having extra little sealable bags makes a big difference, I find.
Just, you know, I've tried, I used a friend's vacuum sealer to seal one of my dehydrated meals. I think I did 2. And they're rigid. That's what I didn't like. I couldn't make it, and then when I did, it actually unsealed on me against the side of the kayak. So, because I was going to buy
There's
a vacuum
some
pack.
with crumply edges. There's different kinds of material, and you can also do a hard seal or a soft seal, depending on how much air you want to take out of your machine.
Yeah, because if it's rigid.
But no, with clothes it's great, or just gear that you just need to stuff in.
So you do a soft seal.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they just curve around and fit in weird little edges.
So how big a sealy thing do you, how big a package do you get?
Well, you cut it in length, so it can be as long as you want, and it's about it can be up to 12 inches wide, or you can do extra seals on the side and make it smaller.
Okay.
A roll of toilet paper gets to be about the size of your fist. David
And you know
Maxwell
it's
gave us all
totally
one for
dry.
Christmas one year.
That's a great
Very
idea.
useful, yeah.
Because that actually
Emergency supply.
Take the cardboard
Okay,
out
and
of
then-
my toilet paper roll to make it even smaller.
And you know, sometimes you're on a long trip and somebody's got a bit of a chronic recurrent problem that starts swelling. Morley's like to stretch his back every hour or so, and the conditions are such that he can stretch his back. Okay, so.
Oh, God, that was nice.
Yeah. Poser. And you know, sometimes we get weather like this, but on the West Coast, you know, those days are, well, I guess July, it's more likely to be like that. And then I was asked to talk a little bit about clouds, weather. This was the picture taken, we landed at Bella Bella, and then we had to, well, at the Bella Bella terminal. And then we had to paddle up to Bella Bella, and then went around the corner into Seaforth Channel. And this was before we went around the corner, the sky. And so that sky tells us what? Besides the sun's already shining, but what do the clouds tell you?
Wind.
Bad weather on the way.
So there's wind, and sure enough, we turned that corner and we had headwind. Not bad, but it was a slog. It died down later in the day. The other thing, generally high is good, high is fine, low, unless it's fog, low is, and dark is more likely to be rain. So that stuff, it's sort of horsetails, but not really. Okay, so then I put in some of these things. So again, you see how that's high? I mean, it's sort of dull, but it's high. So, and it's sort of ripply, good weather, and will often change to blue sky. I'm not going to say all the names because it's more just looking. So we get this fluffy stuff, and it's not going to rain, okay? And it's not going to blow. It's just. I don't think we get a lot of these here, do we, Edgar? It's more you know, that's just sort of your thunder, anvil, thunder, cloudy, that's more of the prairies and places where they get big thunderstorms. Occasionally, we might, but not very often. And so that can be strong winds and thunder, lightning, all that kind of stuff. Has anybody been on the water or near the water, like having lunch when there's been a thunder, or like an electrical storm? We had a good discussion about carbon fiber paddles and being on the water and electrical storm. What do you do? Yeah.
Just roll halfway.
Hope that it's not your time. Anyway, we see a lot of this along the mountains here. The cumulus clouds, white, fluffy, fair weather. If they're spread out, if they're really condensing down and getting thicker and darker, it's going to bring rain. Yeah, that's your fine weather stuff again. That's very similar to my own picture. Now this is like, you know, doom and gloom. There's rain coming. There's a storm coming. You know, we don't really get snow when we're out kayaking in the summer. This kind of stuff, that almost looks like fog to me, that lower stuff. Darker and thicker means rain's on the way. You're allowed to disagree with this if you like. And that's obviously rain. Sometimes we're paddling in Victoria and you look over towards Souk and you see this, but it's not coming right on the way. And then they say it could be bringing showers, but again, if it's light and open and high, it's generally not a problem. This one, it's interesting. They figure this one is going to burn off. I would have put that down as it's going to rain. They said it's going to rain. So that's. I've got a few more things to say other than that. That stuff, those were just offline, except for that one I took on our trip. Now I said, you thought to take a picture of the clouds? I said, yeah. I knew I was good at this talk. No. I like clouds because I rug hook, and I rug hook skies and stuff, and it's neat to look at what nature does. So I just want to talk a little bit about, I guess at the end of that with the weather is, I think this was mentioned at one of our recent meetings, me, we, the weather, and the sea. Okay, so knowing where you are, knowing where your friends are, being aware of the big picture, that's very easy when the weather's calm and it's sunny and it's nice like that. And then the weather starts going south a bit. So that's sort of the sea, you know, like you've seen the big picture. And then the weather comes in a bit and you start thinking about where are my friends, we're gonna start, pump up. And then it really goes south and it's like, I've got to save myself. So just be aware of that. And I asked Michael Party, who's one of the top kayaking instructors around with skills, and he said some people are born with that ability to stay with the big picture, but you can learn it. Everybody can learn it. So when you find that, you know, when you're getting more experience, is really work at staying aware of the big picture. Is the weather coming in? Is that fog coming in? Where's the group? Okay. Turns you into a really good leader. Landing and surf. How many of you have done surf landing courses or clinics? Or just a few of you? Okay, so even in the littler surf, like landing at Cabin Point to have lunch and the swells are coming in and the swells are sort of sweeping across the beach like this, it's worthwhile stopping and looking and watching the behavior of the waves and the timing, because the ocean does have a pattern when you're in an area. And you know, there'll be sets of bigger waves and then it'll calm down. And guess when the time to go is? At the end of a big set. Okay? Don't wait until you're sure it's a calm set, because sure enough you're going to get whacked by the next big set coming in. The other thing is when you're out looking towards the shore to land for your campsite, you can't see the behavior of what's happening to the wave on the other side, whether it's dumping or not. You might pick up a bit because it's frothy going in, and have the most experienced person going first. Okay, that's usually pretty apparent in the group. If it's not, somebody usually puts their hand up to go in. and they're the last person, and they can help, flag you in, where to come in, and the timing, and using paddle, sort of communication. And then they're the last person out. That you can be in your boat, skirted in, paddle up, and they can push you off. And then they have to handle themselves because they're the most experienced. I'll just tell you another.
What do you do in places like up around Tofino in particular? There's areas where you have riptides. And you come into a beach and you have riptide areas as well. What do you do in those situations, or just avoid it?
If you don't have to land there, don't. If you can get, it depends where you want to land down there. If you've got a riptide on a beach going like that, and you want to be there, you want to head way up here. But if it doesn't matter, but, if you've got again, it's the timing, probably more with the waves, and then watch the sets. At Cabin Point, the last couple of times, has been really good because you'll see a set of waves come in, and then it dies down to nothing. And then when it comes up, you don't know how to handle the boat. I was going to just tell you on our, it was on the Cape Scott trip. You guys are all turning your seats here. So we were coming down, and we knew from Eve and Patty's that we could land in Raft. So there's St. Joseph's Bay, and we were going all the way around.
Taking it for the team.
Okay, so we knew our landing spot to try for was Raft Cove. And Eve and Patty and Michelle had bad, close experience where they came in, where the river came in, meeting the swells, and they had a near collision with loaded boats. So they said, no, tuck yourself when you come around, tuck yourself around the corner. Okay, don't go into the mouth. So we were at the corner about to go in, but as we were paddling along, I was looking right across the bay, and I could see a beach. I thought it helps having glasses too. I could see a beach, and I kept watching as we were paddling to go around the corner to do what they had said. And I could see that where we were going to land, it was still a surf landing, it just wasn't as wild. And I could see there was never any white water. And so I said to the people beside me, because it's the one time we learned afterwards, we didn't have our radios on. Because we don't keep our radios on all day to run the batteries down. And so 3 of them took off to go to shore. And 3 of us were hanging back. And I said, you know what, I'm going to head over there. I'm going to radio them. And of course, realizing they didn't have the radios on until they got to shore. And we paddled straight across, and it was a calm landing behind a little reef. And there's actually a campsite there. So not only did we have a really safe landing, we could see Raft Cove. I didn't have to go in another half mile to experience that. I could see it. And with a loaded boat, and we had a long way to go. And so we had a really calm landing. The other thing was, we saved time and about a mile, because they had to go in quite a long way and come back out and then get over to us. Once we got radio contact, we said, yeah, we'll wait till we see you guys launch, and then we'll come up and meet you. Okay, so sometimes on the water, you can change plans depending on what you're seeing happening. Again, that's being really aware of this.
That's a very kind description that Jenny's just given, because I was the one who went in first. I knew exactly where I'm going, didn't have my radio on. And I just kind of kept curling around, and I didn't even look back. If I'd looked back even, I probably would have seen that they were still there, looking at going somewhere else. So I went into the beach
and
landed in the surf. And it all worked out okay, but it was a bit challenging.
But Jean did she surfed it,
Others
which is not a good idea.
Problem, yeah.
Safe, she got in.
So good to stay with the group until you really do know where you're going.
Yeah.
It's a good moral of the story there.
It seems to be a characteristic with some paddlers, is that they just follow. Somebody's leading and they're just follow. I'm not a follower, so there we go. I just want to briefly say, more than one night, when you've got a second day and you're going to go for a paddle, consider 3 at sea as a safety thing. Okay, if there's 2 of you and somebody comes out, the other person comes out of their boat and the boat goes off, it's a bit harder than if there's 3 of you, like 2 to rescue. We have done 2 going on a really safe protected paddle. Communication when you go off as other people stay on land is either have your radios on, or what we do is we say, okay, we'll call you at such and such a time, and everybody turns their radio on around that time, just to check in, okay? Really, yeah, the goal is to be safe, enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey, you know, that's smelling the kelp, and end up friends at the end. Okay, on that note, over to my friend.
Move that hideous picture forward a little bit. Okay. So,
She says lots of good things.
you're going, several of us have several boats. So you're going, so check that tripping boat that sits in the garage most of the time. Just before, and you find you've got a little hole, a little leak, is not a good idea. Make sure you're all prepped and good to go. And that's really all there is to say about that. Okay.
The right one? Right side of the circle.
Oh, okay, the bailout bag. Now, there's often a discussion about the bailout bag, should you take one. I figure if I'm going in the water in really rough seas, am I gonna have that bailout bag on me, which weighs, you know, has all the essentials in it? Probably not. So I found this little thing, it came through one of those rapid media things the other day, and it's just a little teeny tiny kit. So if for some reason or another you wind up on shore away from your buddies and you have to make do, just have the essentials in there in your PFD. I figure anything that you absolutely need should be on you. You don't want to put your paddle down to grab anything else if the shit hits the fan. So yeah, just keep it simple and keep it handy.
What Lincoln does, and I've taken it on board, is I have that little seal line one that's about that big.
Yeah, I got one too.
It's behind my seat, and he says if he's heading into rougher conditions, he stops, puts it around his waist, and keeps paddling. So, you know.
I've got all my repair kit and all that in there, and mine's really heavy. And I figure it's doing me no favors at all if I put it around my waist. So I'd rather have something that's buoyant or almost non-existent. Okay, clothing, the importance of keeping warm. So layer, layer, layer. Things take a long time to dry out in a salt air environment. You don't want to wear cotton. Merino wool is excellent. And take a warm jacket. If you get wet, either in the water or on shore, you're going to want to warm up. It makes it miserable if you get cold. I did this so long ago, I've forgotten what I've written down here.
Bow bag.
Oh, yeah. So that's a down jacket. And then I've got all kinds of these little layers of merino wool. And what I do is I pack 2 bags. Now, if it's a long trip, I'll pack half my clothes in a bow bag and the other half in another bow bag. One bow bag will go into the stern. Okay, it's the stern bag. And then, because everything's black too, so in a dimly lit tent, everything looks the same. So these guys are pretty waterproof. Let's see, I can't get the thing closed. And yes, I stash one in the stern, and then it's there for if I'm doing day paddles. So I've got my emergency clothing already with me, and it's just sort of out of the mix, and it makes packing easier because it's all stuffed in the end. So here's my IKEA bag. I love camping. So all of this will easily go in my boat. And I try to pack things in reverse order. So first thing in is the bow bag. And usually I try and fit a little something in there ahead of time. I was going to be so organized. Things
Wine
have
bottle.
moved around in the cockpit. Anyhow, the umbrella will go on deck. I like this clear one. Cost me a big $3 at the dollar store. So if I want to use it as a sail, I can put it up and you can still see through it. But it generally will be on deck, handy for me. So that goes in. And then I'm big on compression bags. Some people will argue that they make things really hard to work around, but I like the big thing that goes in there. And this is a 0 degrees sleeping bag, and it's down. Other people will argue that down is not a good thing to take because if it gets wet, it's hard to get it dry. I've never had one get
Do
wet.
you put that in a dry bag, or do you just put it in just in the?
It's a dry bag. It's a dry
Oh, it's a
compression
dry
bag. That is a
compression
dry bag, yeah. And I do the same with my tent. So that's all stuffed in there. This is a MSR Hubba Hubba.
There's tent minus poles and, is that your fly in your tent?
Yep.
And poles?
No, not poles.
Well, you never know.
Yeah, no, not the poles. Rubber boots. These are packable rubber boots. They are great because you can stuff them into all kinds of little nooks and crannies, and they fold up nicely, and they're really handy to have in camp, especially when the kitchen sink is tall. Bear spray. This is my teddy bear. I like taking bear spray, if you're in bear country, obviously, but it just makes you sleep better, makes you feel more secure. These are my preference for dry bags. They're clear so you can see what's inside, and bring an extra. So I have an extra one of those, and I usually carry a couple of extras because things leak. Stuff happens. I have two of my 8 stoves are in here, and this is a cozy. The big thing with the long trips is the food. I mean, there's no way around it. You have to take extra food. So you want to condense everything else as much as you possibly can. So this is a jet boil. They're awesome for using minimal fuel. But because I'm tripping with a group, I always bring a bigger pot too and another stove. Now that stove will work with these canisters. Now I know Michael Ailson weighs his canisters after each trip. So he knows exactly how much fuel he's going to use to boil a pot of water and how much he's got left in the can. What have I read in this one? Not much. That's my. This one's kind of rusting out. I would recommend that you put them in a Ziploc bag or some sort of waterproof bag. I've never had a problem with the rust sort of compromising the seal, but I can see that it might happen.
Yeah, do you prefer those to a white gas stove?
No, I prefer my white gas. I love my white gas stove. It sounds like a jet engine starting up.
Yeah.
I get lots of complaints on my white gas stove, so I've gone to this, and it also works with the jet boil, which is so quick and easy in the morning, because I like my coffee first thing in the morning. A nice big mug of it.
Meg, do you want to tell me how you can crush down those cans?
Oh, yeah, I've got a thing here. What else do I have in here? A mat. Make sure you're comfy and off the ground. These mats are great. This is a bag that blows them up. And again, you can see how small it is. And this bag that blows it up is also a dry bag. So that's an awesome thing.
Is that a thermarest thing, or is that a small thermarest?
It's an X-bag.
And the schnozzle bag.
And the schnozzle bag, exactly. You can get them in down. They're just ridiculously expensive. Or you can get the really thick X-bag, which I have for winter camping, but that's enough for summer. These are little handy gidgy-gadgies that you can put on deck. They're just basically right on, wipe off. So while you're listening to your VHF, you can jot down what's going on out there.
Use a grease
Nope,
pencil?
any
or-
kind of pencil, actually.
The dye-
You do have to use a little bit of a scrub to get it off of it.
It's a dive slate.
It's a what?
A diver's
Yeah, that's
slate.
right, I got it at a dive shop.
Oh.
So, yeah, you can write on them underwater and, yeah.
Help.
Things have to do usually a couple of purposes. So these are my shoes that I bring along. So they're a paddle shoe. They're called a drain shoe. The water goes right through them. But with some Gore-Tex socks or even plastic bags over your feet, they will wind up being good hiking shoes too when you're on shore. So you don't have to bring hikers as well.
So you wear that with your dry suit?
Yep.
Is that what you wear?
Yeah. I prefer paddling in just little neoprene booties, but for tripping, when you need things to do two things, then I do that. I can't remember what's in here. Oh, that's my pillow. Be comfortable. Be comfortable. You can get a much smaller version of a pillow, but this is the one that works for me. So I find that if I don't have a good night's sleep, then it's really hard to get going the next day. So make sure you're comfortable.
Is that inflatable?
It is. It's got foam chips in it and it's inflatable, and then I put a little fleece cover over top of it so that it's lauderable. I'm just babbling here, and okay. Fuel, okay. All right. Let's get through the rest of this. Oh, just I'm going to go through a couple of little, what I think are handy little tips. I bring a sarong along. It can do a lot. It's an extra cover if you're cold at night. It gives you a little bit of modesty when you really do have to get into the chuck and get scrubbed up. And beach blanket, it's just handy to have. And I picked up this tip from a man, so it doesn't have to be a woman's thing. These towels are super lightweight, and you can get them from MAC, and they're called adventure towels, and they dry in a heartbeat. Another handy thing is this gear line, which is great for just, find a couple of trees and hang everything up there. And inside my tent too, I don't really like the gear lofts inside a tent because they just make it so much smaller. So I run string on the inside of the little loops, and then you can just sort of hang a few things over there. Bring extras of these, some sort of bungees on deck, because sometimes things just don't go into the kayak the way you want them to. And if you have to put it on deck, then that's handy. Oh, treat yourself to a chair. They just make your camp experience so much more enjoyable, especially if you're out there for a few weeks. You just really want that back support. Here's the thing that I was originally looking for. So this would go in the nose of my kayak, but if there's a way for something to get jammed in the nose of your kayak, it will do it, especially when you're stuffing so many things after. So put a string on anything that's going right in the end. And there are my.
Is that a silk tarp?
That's a silk tarp, yeah, a little one. And that's usually my backup day trip. If it's really raining and I need 2 tarps, then I'll get that one out. It's quite small and will just sort of cover the tent. Poles, they'll fit along the bottom anywhere. And the last things that I like to put in my kayak are something for the rain. So when you stop and it's pouring rain, you can get yourself dry. And this tarp is a 9x12 silk tarp. And these are expensive, but I think they're worth it because you can see it's really very small. So it tucks into a small space. But I like to leave that on top, and rope. Take lots. Take lots. There's always a good purpose for rope. Get something that's not going to stretch, and bright colors so you don't trip your campmates or yourself. Yeah, plenty of it.
One of the things I do is I take some flagging tape,
Mm-hmm.
and I put that on at the end of my
Yeah.
tent poles, so people
Yeah,
don't
you
trickle
can get
through.
reflective line too, which is very handy. And I have, sometimes it's really dark, right, and you have a hard time. This is it's called a luminade, and you blow it up and it becomes, it's solar charged. And it makes a nice little lantern, and because it's solar charged and I can charge it every day very easily, I hang it inside the tent, and then, you know, you can find your tent, and it makes it easier to see everything all around.
What's that called?
I've never seen
It's
that.
a luminade. It's one of those, it was one of those startup things, it cost me $20 or something like that. And it works like a charm, and it floats too. So you can charge it on deck. It's also a safety item, because you can, if you went in the water or you got stuck up there at night or something, it would make you a lot more visible. Now, I also have the aforementioned carry straps handy and on top. And I keep meaning to try this, but they look to me like they would be good, once you untangle them. Rescue straps too. So if you put them over the cockpit combing, you could give yourself a boost up if need be. We were generously lent some wood carriers, which wound up being awesome carry straps too, because they're really beefy, and 6 on a boat is much, much better. Other tips, so bug net, don't forget that. A little backpack for day hikes is a good idea. And again, you can see I really go for things to be as small as possible. So there's more room for good food and wine in my kayak. I try and take this along, just for extra seating for lunchtime or in the boat. You'll find that things start to hurt after a few weeks, so if you've got...
Put on hard chairs in meetings.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, what other tips do I have here? Oh yeah, this is one that Deb brought along, a brush, because if you get sand in your zippers when you're out there, it's a pain. This is just an old toothbrush, but any kind of brush will work, and she had a nail brush, I think, but any kind of a brush will work. Or we were thinking too, a can of air would be great for blasting stuff out. Again, you need a Ziploc. Ziploc bags, bring lots. This is my kitchen bag. I have a few tip things in here. Oh, this is something we keep talking about bringing and keep forgetting. If you get to a spot that is light on good camp spots, some clippers can bring down a little salal. I mean, you don't want to rearrange the whole terrain, but...
Yeah, you do.
And I carry lighters in every pocket and whatnot, because you're always needing lighters. Oh, and I carry everything, including the kitchen sink. Now, I was always inclined to just wash my my dishes in the chuck and not worry too much about it. But Deb has a history of being a nutritionist and a health nurse, and she has me now convinced that we need to use the bleach solution. So what we do is we usually have a couple of kitchen sinks along, wash in one, rinse in the other with a little bit of bleach, and then you don't need to worry about getting some horrendous gastrointestinal thing while you're out back of beyond.
And your experience with the sink that goes up and down?
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, I bought the kitchen sink, and Morley said to me, what about washing, using the ocean as a kitchen sink? And I said, well, the kitchen sink was 4 feet high on the last beach that we were at, so kind of handy. Oh, I bring these little laundry pods too. So an empty dry bag makes a great washing machine. Put your stuff in there, put it in soak, leave the laundry pod in there, and then go for a paddle. Everything's soaking and washing as you go. Just pray for rough water. And you can keep yourself smelling somewhat better.
Lee Valley now sells a bag just for doing that.
Oh, is that right? What do they charge you for it?
About $40.
Yeah.
It's got ridges on the inside of the bag for
Oh, really?
Catch it.
I'm looking for my,
Squishy
hand
ball.
crusher. These are now available for the isobutane cans, so you can crush them. So they become recyclable, and two, you can make them reasonably flat, taking up less room in your kayak.
Where did that come from?
This one, everybody sells them.
What's it called?
It's called a Crunch It.
Max.
Yeah, Max got them, Atmosphere, Valhalla, I'm sure, Alberni Outpost, all of the usual.
So it's for
suspect
puncturing,
Robinsons.
it's for puncturing, and then you can flatten your cans.
Right.
It's basically something to puncture the can with,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly,
Right.
but they're not easy to do, like you
No.
cannot do them with just a regular can opener. That's about, time rolls on here, that's about it for tips from me. I was also going to talk about, as per request, okay. Oh, ablutions. So this also goes at the top of my kayak for those good go kind of moments. So I carry in here, I use Kleenex. One, I count it out. I'm almost as anal as Alan on certain things. I make sure, well, within reason. So I find it easier on my tush and also easier to control for quantity in that. And I have a paper bag too, so that if I need to save up for the fire, then it's just more pleasant. I'm also a big fan of the pea cloth. So you don't always need the TP. So the pea cloth, you've got a great big ocean there to rinse it out, and I find that's handy. What's that? Hand sanitizer. And yes, and I usually have spares in a pocket too.
Do you carry a lighter to burn your paper?
I burn my TP out, yeah. And that's the other thing, where to go. Well, have a quick discussion. At the beach, it's usually okay, the girls are going this way, the guys are going this way. You want to keep it as far away from your toothbrushing area as possible. Try to go below the high tide line. If that isn't possible, top 6 inches of the soil is where your fecal matter is going to go back to nature. I usually have a thing at the beginning of a trip. I'll say to people, if you come across a little cairn of rocks on a beach, don't investigate. These guys here are wonderful, wet ones. They seem, you know, the conservationist in you doesn't really want to use them, but treat yourself when you're on a trip. You can get a great layer of grime off with these wet ones. They're very handy in the tent.
It's a good idea to get ones with no perfume.
Oh, I can't do perfume
Well,
of
you know,
any description, yeah.
A lot of them have got perfume.
Yeah, part on the bits, I know. What else did I have here? Oh, right, and after everything comes out of the IKEA bag, they fold flat and just tuck them under a bungee or right on top so you can load everything back in. And they also double as a doormat. That's thanks to Alan. He showed me how to fold them in all neatly.
Or a shelter.
Or a shelter, yeah.
I don't take 23, but I do take 8. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I take 2. But, because I.
But you have a Telpa now, so you
Yeah.
can take.
No,
You
I
can live
know,
large.
I'm not, no. I think this is gonna be easier to pack. And my deal always is that you're gonna wait for me on the water. I am a slow paddler, so do not wait for me on land. And I'm pretty good about getting in my boat quickly. Jenny was saying 2 hours, it's an hour for, well, hour and a half tops for me to get in my boat. But I've really zoomed through this because time rolls on and there are 2 more presenters here. So I think that's it for me.
Now, do you try and pack that bag as with all that stuff in it in the boat, or do you take it all out of the boat and put it in the boat, in little nooks and crannies where it'll go? Like, I'm
I
wondering how
have-
you keep
what-
track of the 300 pieces you took out of there.
What I do is a front hatch bag and a back hatch bag. And I'll put my front hatch bag in my cockpit and I'll load my boat
Okay.
from it. And I try and pack it into the bag in a reverse order, more or less.
Yeah.
Some people do little diagrams and this goes here and that goes there. I basically grope around like, okay, that'll go there. But I do know what will go in my front hatch.
Okay.
So I just keep working at it till it's in there. And I always think, no, it's gotta go in, so it's going in, one way or another. And I joke with Ellen, he takes a lot of cans and whatnot, and I call his boat the cantry. But also, I'm not a strong person either, so I try and keep the weight down in my boat as much as possible, so that because more injuries happen on shore than on the water, right? So, I don't like being part of the problem.
Len, if you were just gonna take one stove,
Yeah.
jet boil with a little butane, which would you take?
Well, this works on the same isobutane, but I would probably, if I was just taking one,
Yeah.
I'd probably take the other one. This is awesome for boiling water, and if I was just doing a rehydrating trip,
Yeah.
it would be great, but I tried cooking in it, and it's not good.
So what's your other one, is it a whisper light or what?
No, I also, my white gas one that I didn't bring is,
Dragonfly?
no, it's not an MSR, it's I'm at that age, hey? It's a white gas.
Primus?
It works- A rocket, yeah. This is just a little unit that screws onto the isobutane container. But it works like charm. Boils up really quickly too. So yes, I'd bring this one for, if I had to choose one.
And do you use that silt tarp to put over your tent? Like, in
The big
addition to
silt
the-
tarp, generally, it depends. Like if you've got Alan along and he's got the great big guide tarp, then I would probably put it over my tent. And I think it's over the tent in some of the pictures.
It looks that way in addition to flies, and so you're kind of doubly protecting. your
Yeah,
tent.
it is really nice packing up a dry tent. You're not gonna keep it perfectly dry, but if you pack it, if you pack it up semi-dry, you can put it all in the same bag. You don't have to worry about having a separate bag for the fly and drying everything out and all that. So it's handy for that. It's not essential. I trust my fly. I really do. The Hubba Hubba is a great little tent and I do trust it, but it's just nicer and you get out and you can stand up and you're dry.
And if you've got a bit of if you can crouch under that, you can dry your clothes off with a little towel, squeeze that out before you get into your tent.
Yeah.
And that to me is the.
You're gonna drag a little
Flip it over
something
the
in and
front,
out all the
you just
time.
get most of your body dry before you get into your tent. Because you don't want to drip in your tent, or take your, your rain gear off and you're trying to hang it out, but it's hard to fit that under your fly
Yeah.
sometimes. So that's why I like keeping just a bit more coverage of the front.
I should have pointed out, this pot here too has a built-in diffuser, so it's really good for conserving fuel.
Do they make that?
Sure, Jenny.
I like looking after our
Well, mine came from the back room. I will tell you that it worked a little bit. But, sorry? Well, I went in looking for it and they said, oh, we might have one in the back room, so I didn't know if they were heading back or not. Same with the frying pan. This is a jet oil attachment, but it also works with the other unit, so,
Where'd your squishy bowls go?
squishy ball, I've got the squishy ball. I love the squishy ball, but they're not available anymore, so I thought, oh, I just.
Well, I got some from the US.
Yeah, from
Port
the,
Angeles.
well, yeah, but they cost you like $50 for a little silicone bowl. I did see some collapsible dog bowls. Where was that the other day, Morley?
Pets R Us, I don't
I-
remember.
That are silicone too, but they have the little ridges which makes them harder to clean. These are wonderful. If you're in the States and you can pick one up and turn them inside out and clean them up. They're awesome. But, another thing would be, these tubes from, I lost part of it, this is an old one, but you can put the toothpaste in a little container in the bottom, and I usually have mine in my pocket handy. Pardon? Oh, neck, I said, they're just called tubes.
Just like I couldn't find the lighters until found them. You have to realize that Lynn is a backpacker, so her tent.
I'm an aging backpacker.
And all that stuff is lightweight, small. Yeah, I should have brought my stuff in, mine's bigger.
Yeah, but it doesn't need to be, and then you have more room, you don't have to worry about getting all the food in so much. Sorry, Barbie, yes?
So do you have any gear on your deck, or you're able to get all your gear?
You know what, it's, I don't know, it depends, not very much. I try and go with none, but sometimes I do a lousy pack job, and then I just, depending on what it is, I'll leave it on deck, rather than pull the boat apart and start again. So,
Depends on your conditions too.
yeah, exactly.
Depends on conditions.
Oh,
If it's gonna be rough, you don't want pineapple.
I'm amazed at what.
What do you do with all your gear? Doesn't it make your boat unstable to have all that gear?
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Well, he can't.
He puts 50 pounds of tin cans down there.
Exactly.
I can't see any way he could possibly capsize in that thing. I know, that's why I've been speeding through this.
Also, then I gotta know about the toilet paper. You know, you have no toilet paper, you have Kleenex.
I use Kleenex, yeah.
And
It's the same.
how much do you take for 3 weeks?
Monday, Tuesday. And then for measure, just in case. It's a personal thing. Yeah, exactly. I know that you wanted me to talk about this kind of stuff, but frankly, it's not something we really do a lot of discussing about on the trip, so I don't know what anybody else does. If anybody else has some great tips.
Patty does talk about not using any.
Patty uses no toilet paper at all.
And
or
you
has
can cut
done.
way down if you collect little shells on the beach.
Yeah, or that scrubby seaweed. I'm just not that good. But I do take my lighter and burn out the TP right there, so I'm not polluting the environment anymore. I just did.
One thing is to bring a little trowel, if you want to bury it.
Too bulky for me. Yeah, it was, I just use clamshells or rocks or whatever, and again, sometimes the intertidal is a very shelfy, rocky area, so just collect a few rocks along the way and do your thing.
One thing Deb taught me to do, which works really well, is the little panty liners. There's almost nothing to them. You put them in some, and so you change that every day. You have to change your underwear every day.
Or there's the rest theory.
John air washes his clothes.
Oh, okay. One is rest, the other is, oh, I see, yeah.
The rest is as good as a wash, right?
Okay, and every now and then, you really need a shower or a scrub. So I'm gonna put my stuff away here and turn over to Morley.
So I'm just gonna do a little bit of bushcrafty kind of side of things that just can help, especially on a long trip, to make things fun and easy and actually get a little bit of luxury potentially. So I just have these little, like, oh, look at this, a long pole. I wish I could think of a use for that. If you want to get a number of poles to make a shower, to make a good shower, you could do it off a tree or something and that too, especially when over the beach. But poles are easy if you can find them, and some beaches have lots of that. If you ever learned lashing in scouts or guiding, which I think a lot of people got their bushcraft from, don't use the lashing that they typically teach in there. We used to build bridges and all kinds of stuff, and it was all with this very rigid lashing that would play a little bit but hardly move at all. You actually don't want that for building this kind of thing. You want tight lashing around the pole so it doesn't slip, but you want movement. You want to be able to move the poles around easily, and so you want actually some space and little gaps between the racks. Get a third one up, and then bang, you've got a tripod. So long as you get the base more or less equilateral, and you can adjust things for slope and everything through this, of course, you can have a very stable construction in very short time. The bare cache pulley, which I'll show you in a minute, and I have here, you can use that actually to raise your water up if you want a really luxurious shower and lots of water up high. You can use that to help get it up. And you can add a few more poles to make sort of a bit of a circle, a bit of a teepee kind of thing. You don't need to lash those in. Once you've got the three up, you can just lean them in to the top. And then on your last one, you can just tie the corner of a tarp, put it up, and then pull the rest of it around and make a privacy thing there if you're showering on a beach with other people. So I say, ignore this step of nudity, won't bother anyone, but otherwise it's a nice way of just making it, while using that tarp you haven't used yet. So add a little bit of traditional Aboriginal knowledge to the mix, and like the big thing about showers and when you're out is you're going to use a lot of water, and you're going to use a lot of fuel to heat that water. So obviously, you know, when you're measuring out your little cans of fuel and like, well, that's got to do breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 3 days, you're not going to use that to heat your water up. You don't really want to mess your big pots up by putting them on a wood fire, because the smoke and the creosote, that's gonna mess them up. So what you can do is get a good fire going and put in some nice round rocks, kind of fist size to small loaf size. You want to avoid layered rocks. That's the one safety kind of thing. So layered rocks can explode. When you're doing this, you want ideally you know, a lava type rock, or at least something that's been subject to lots of pressure and stress and heat in the past. So while the fire's heating up, you can go off and use one of your spare dry bags to collect water. Doesn't need to be particularly clean, because you're just showering in it. You don't need to worry about it being potable and all that kind of stuff. You're heating up the rocks. So you come back and here's, as they say, here's where you have to start trusting. Take the hot rocks out of the fire. I also, I didn't bring one, and there's a photo, the opening shot actually had fire tongs to take the rocks out of the fire, clean them up, and then put them in. And it's another Aboriginal thing that people used on the West Coast here, because people used to do all their cooking in baskets or wood boxes, neither of which do very well when you set them over the top of an open fire. And so people for 10,000, 12,000 years on the coast have been heating the rocks up in the fire and then putting them in a watertight container of some kind that's flammable, but bringing that up to boiling. Well, you can use that same technology for showering. So you take the hot rocks out of the shower, or out of the fire, you roll them around on some pebbles and that to get the ash and charcoal off of it, or you can even dip them in a little container of water if you want. And then you can drop them in your bag, and it won't melt a hole so long as you haven't, don't want to put too many rocks in there, or you might worry about that. But so long as they can move around a little bit, and you probably want to move them around so they don't touch the edge directly for too long, it heats up the water very, very quickly. And then you can either use that bag, or you can transfer into, this is a drinking water bag, but presumably you're going to have one or two of those that's you can use for this. You can transfer the water into one of these, and this has a I'm not sure where the actual shower end is.
It's right,
but-
it's there. And then you just use the tap.
Oh, yeah, there's the little bit in here, yeah. So this is this 7 liters?
I think it's 6.
6? Yeah, so you can, you know, you can fill this up, but you can refill it a couple times if you want, because doing it this way, you can, you know, you're almost independent of the water and the fuel. Unusual problems with trying to shower. You don't need to have, you know, you can take a sun shower, but they don't work when it's cloudy and rainy, and as I say, you don't want to do all those other things that give problems. So, which way up is this? That's why I can't figure it out, it's upside down. Bear caches. So Alan mentioned earlier, you can use, or Jenny did, someone did, you can either use your kayak and keep things in there, but everybody probably saw that video that went viral earlier this year of the woman in Alaska saying, "Oh, bear, don't break my kayak." Bears gonna go after the kayak and tear it apart if they smell the food in there and really want to get at it. Bear caches, these bear barrels are great, especially with dehydrated food. You can, I think we had 2 of these, didn't we? And these are not, I'm sure it's a fluke, but they will actually fit right side up and then slide under the hatch in the back of a talco without even tipping over, which is quite amazing. And you can get a couple of them in your back hatch, and there's still lots of room for other stuff. So that's the bear thing. You can look at it afterwards. If you haven't seen one, they've got little catches on the top to lock the top on if the bears can't get through. The other thing is to make a bear cache and hoist your food bags up, or extra ones if you have, maybe if you're on a long trip, not everything's going to fit in the bear barrel. So you don't want to just try to pull things up over a branch because it's just really hard. You can't do it. You can use an extra line and put a carabiner or something on the end, or one pulley. If you just go up and down, you're beating friction a little bit, but it's still really hard. So what you want to do is use pulleys and use mechanical advantage. So if you have a 50-pound weight that you're only pulling 15 or 20, well, if it's 3 to 1, it's 50, you're pulling 17 pounds or 20 pounds probably with the friction up to lift the 50 pounds. So it's much easier to do. I have the little system I got here. People can look at it afterwards, and it's got one side with one line on it that goes up and over the branch and back down, and then pulls the block up to the top. And this one stays down attached to that, and then you clip all your food bags onto the Wiener, and then hoist it up, and it's surprisingly efficient and relatively easy to do. And Lynn used it backpacking afterwards for a backpacking trip, and found it was. She really didn't believe me at first, but she did after using it for a bit. It actually worked.
Where'd you get the block, Monty?
The blocks are from Trotac, and they're, I think they're like large sailing dinghies, very small keelboat size kind of blocks. They're a little bit pricey, and the line is pricey. I think it's about $100 for this system by the time we put it all together. But it's super non-stretch rope. Actually I used another rope for the one that goes up the branch and down. And I pulled it up, locked it off, so it was right up at the top, and then started pulling the system up. And the block just came down and down and down, and the food stayed right on the ground. It was like, yeah, that's not going to work. So you really need a low stretch, or these are virtually non-stretch, whatever that new stuff's called.
Spectra.
Yeah. So say if you're trying to get 15 feet off the ground, which is really what you want for grizzlies, with just black bears around, you can go a lot shorter. But with this, you'd need 60 feet of line plus another 30 feet to get the block up of the tree. If you use a prusik system, which you can read about on the internet, I haven't tried it, you can get by with a lot less. The climbers use that a lot, and that when they need the mechanical advantage and they don't have, you know, they don't have the blocks to, and all the line to go up and down over a long distance, they do it in short pieces and just pull a little bit at a time. And that way you could get by with a lot less line. So I think I've dealt all that. Yeah, ideal cache tree is one leaning over a fairly fine beach, not a lot of rocks. You can lay the lines out, make sure they're all straight, not tangled, hook them up and go. If you have to do it in the trees, you want to look for a nice, good-sized branch that's not, you know, you're going to be able to throw something up and over to start with. And when you're laying out the lines, you want to really stretch them out full length and run the lines if they're not already run, and keep it from getting tangled. When you're in salal, it's going to tangle anyway. You just have to kind of work with it. It's easiest with a couple of people and just work to clear it and get it ready, and then go up. It takes a little bit of time, but it's not terribly bad. Just another picture of the long trip this summer to say, yeah, it wasn't always easy. It was hard to get pictures of what the swell's like, but it was probably a good 2-meter swell running that day. And I'm also talking about fires a little bit, just before John does his thing. I thought you could come up later and look. I've got a series of different commercial and some dryer lint and things of tinders. There's one that works particularly well. I really like, just because I like playing around with this stuff, I really liked lighting fires without matches or lighters, and these things are just amazing. They give a hell of a spark. And with the right tinder, it starts on usually the first or the second strike, and did it in some fairly hard rain and got it going immediately, actually on a day when we had some big lighters and stuff. We were having trouble getting those lit and going, and this actually with the this one tinder that I got somewhere here worked surprisingly well. And of course, these are also great if your starter on your stove gives out, you know, that bang, it's gonna light your stove too. So very nice little Swedish strike-a-light systems.
Where did you get that? Matt has them, I think. I got mine back.
This is from Atmosphere, I think I just got it the other day, but Matt carries them.
What are they called?
Yeah.
This is a,
I haven't actually. I looked at it.
this is Light My Fire one end. I thought it was called Swedish Strike-a-Light, but it might be something else.
What did you use to get the black paint off, the covering? Did it come with a covering?
No, it's got a sort of a bit of a black. You just scrape it once or twice and it starts working.
There's the cheaper ones, it's really thick.
Oh, yeah.
Horrendous to get it off, so.
Yeah, these ones are about $15, I think, but they're, you know, I think
You can get them for less, and I wouldn't recommend them, because you'll spend the whole time trying to get the black stuff off.
Yeah, and the very best tinder I found, which is somewhere here, I shall find it eventually, but it comes in little pink pellets, and it's I think it's a cotton or something like that that's infused with some kind of wax substance. But you can, it's fairly hard, but it's not greasy to work with, and then you can pull it apart and fray it a little bit and get all that surface area, and that's what just starts like crazy. The other thing I found recently, I tried to start the dryer lint. I tried to start that the other day, and yeah, kind of go, but not really. Didn't like
roll
going.
it in Vaseline, or you use?
Yeah, I didn't try that. Yeah, that might work better. But the black tree lichen, they're really thick, old man's beard type black lichen. I was really surprised how well that worked. It didn't want to light and it was a heavy rain. Didn't want to light right away, but I put some in my pocket and carried it back to where we were staying, and took it out of the pocket, put it down, and tried the light, and it started almost right away. So I was really impressed by that. So as a pure bush side version.
Do you take a saw or an axe?
Yes, I have taken saws before, I've broken a few, I haven't been impressed. I know there's a couple of really good ones, and someone has a saw that lasted them 15 years or something so far. I like just I got this because it's not quite a hatchet and it's not as big as your usual axe. And it's got a nice cover on it. And it has a splitting wedge partway up the blade, so, and it's been on a lot of kayak trips and a lot of salt water, and it still keeps a pretty good edge. And it's got a good, you can use it as a hammer as well if you need to. And a sort of a plasticized handle that it's really skookum, and has enough weight and heft and length to the handle that I'm able to chop into what you want to find if it's really raining hard on the west coast, and especially the north and central coast, is to find an old dead cedar tree that's leaning, or a live one with a big dead face on it. But you want a leaning one, you want to go to the underside of it, make sure it's relatively solid, and you can whack at it and chop high and split pieces off, and you can get lots of big pieces of cedar that's going to get your fires, after your fire starter's going, you want to get the wood going, the cedar's going to do that, and then you want to be dry and get your other wood going as well. But getting a fire going when it's really wet, it can be really, really challenging, and it spends time. It's worthwhile spending the time to get the right wood first to make sure it's going to work. Otherwise, you're wasting a whole lot of time and not having much happen. And you really need it to dry clothes out and stuff. If it's raining hard for like a couple of days in a row, you want to set up have spare tarp, especially an old one. We actually scavenged some old ones that had been cached in the bush and that, and set them up, and then got fires going underneath, and then dried things underneath the separate fire tarp. So.
You take newspaper with you? Paper?
No.
Let's use this here.
Yeah, just between the fire starter and the little pellets were great because they take up almost no room at all. They're just little tiny things, and they last the whole trip. You only need one or half of one a day, and it's really wet.
Whereabouts do you find the pellets?
I think it was at
Alberni Outpost.
Yeah. I've looked in town. I've gone around to a bunch of the stores in town. I haven't been able to find them anywhere down here.
Alberni Outfitters?
Outpost.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Closest one's in Duncan, all right?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does odor still emit from those beer barrels? Like you have to keep them away from your campsite?
I think they're pretty much, I'm not sure what the seal's like. We just tried to float one for a long time.
Yeah, I read up on it. You'll get odors out of them.
Yeah,
You're not supposed to
yeah,
have
it
them
doesn't,
right
it doesn't
next
look
to
sealed enough. Maybe if you use
could try sealing it better.
one of your things, that might.
So keep it away from the tent.
But the thing is, they can't
Yeah.
get into it, so they lose, eventually they're gonna lose interest. Unless
So
it's
it could be a long
a
time.
really big fish.
On somebody's lick.
But they might bat it around and push it into the bush a ways, but eventually they're gonna lose interest in it, go for something easier, and then you're gonna wait till they've left, and then you're gonna go get your barrel back, so.
Where do you
Yeah.
get those?
Well, also, a little tip from Eve is old bicycle inner tubes make great little fire starters, although they kind of stink, but if it's really wet and you're trying to get something going, they'll burn, and they make their own little chimney and can get your kindling started.
I take a couple of little tea lights
Susan?
in my emergency kit, just, because it's like a little candle, and you can
Yep.
do, if you won't work with a fire starter, but it will work with a match or a lighter, and that's a way like to get your.
Yeah, a lot of these will burn, these little things. These ones are beeswax. I quite like them too. Plus they smell really nice. And they're a little less sort of petrochemically than some of the other ones to get that sustained heat that you need to dry the wood out enough to actually start burning. So, yeah, we can, if there's any time, oh, it's already 9, after we can,
Susan?
we can come up and look at this stuff. John?
Susan?
Well, my presentation is much shorter. You'll be glad to know. So I've got a couple of topics. A few comments on food. Yeah, on my topics are water, food, and camp activities. So the things, I only want to say a few things about water.
We just put your picture on just.
Okay. It's always good to know who you are. With water, I was trying to think of what's a pithy comment to make about water, and it's kind of like, take enough. But, you know, that's not as easy as it sounds, because like in our Central Coast trip, when you carefully research certain water sources with the route that we were planning, it turned out that between the start from Bella Bella and our next certain source of water was 6 days. And most of those days were in quite offshore islands, the McMullen Group and the Goose Group. And so we were going to have to paddle back across the channel to get to that certain water source. So there would be another couple of days where you might be weather-bound. So we decided that we needed to start with 8 days water, that's 24 liters. So that's quite a lot of 24, 27 liters. That's quite a lot of water. So when you're planning your trip, you really need to think about, you know, how much water you need to start with and how much you're going to pack. It's a lot of weight, so you got to keep it low in the boat and close to the center of buoyancy in the boat. The other thing about water is just replenishing it. So when we got to our weather source, usually our water source, you're not going to have time to filter the water there, so you have to have extra bags to collect the water. You know, so there's different bags you could use, extra dry bags that you take. And so the amount of water that you collect, you got to figure out when's your next certain water source. Right, so you got to collect that amount of water. And so you have to, when you're planning the trip, you have to have that amount of storage. You know, that amount of bags that you can collect that water. So then when you get to camp, we filter the water. A group of 6 people, I think we had about 3 different water filters. You need to have several water filters because they could, you know, one could get clogged. They take a while. So it's probably good to have one water filter for every 2 people. This is just a gravity feed one, you hang it up. I like this one because this one here screws into the cap of the dromedary. It goes right in it, so you can keep separate. The whole thing about the water collection system is you have to keep separate the bags that you collect it in and filtered it in, and then the bags that you contain the water in, so that you don't cross-contaminate the water. The other thing with the water is it's an ongoing process. You always need to be looking, when's our next certain source of water, how much water do we have left? When it rains, collect the water, filter it, and always be replenishing and topping up. Okay, that's it for water. Food.
John, did you always filter your rainwater?
I did.
Yeah.
Lynn and I risk managed it, I think, and we didn't.
You know, there's all kinds of stories of people, you know, you collect a bucket of water off a tarp and you leave it in the morning and you look at what's growing in it.
I know.
Or wriggling in it. It's so with food.
When Doug Alderson gave his talk, he's never filtered water, ever, and never got sick. And his comment was if you get sick on the trip, it's from dirt contamination or food contamination. You get Giardia, you get it after you get home. So you're not going to get sick on the trip.
You drink spring water.
So what I want to do is this is a good discussion. I want to move right on to food because we're past 9 o'clock now, so we'll keep rolling. So with food, we did it 2 ways. I'm very allergic to sulfites, so I did all my own meals. And so other people, if you're allergic to anything that seriously affects you, you have to take responsibility for that. And you really need to look after your own food. You can't rely on a long trip in remote areas that every other meal is, gonna be safe for you to eat. So the group meals, there were 20 meals, 5 of them, they each did 4 meals. And then, appetizers, meal, and dessert. And then they also each night, another paddler was a sous chef. And then cleanup, I think Lynn touched on it. The group was very good with that. They had 3 sinks, a washing sink, a rinse sink, a sanitized sink, 2 teaspoons of bleach in the sanitized sink. Then they were very good about putting the dishes and things on a vinyl mat so they could air dry. And then the scrubby that they used to wash them with, they would rinse that off in the sanitizing solution and air dry that on the mat as well. That was Deb's nutrition background system. It seems nobody got sick, so it worked pretty well. The other things I wanted to say about food is that nearly everybody on long trips loses weight. Every long trip I've been on, I've lost weight. Everybody else I've paddled with on the trips lost weight. And if you talk to people on long trips, they'll all say they lost weight. And you don't get enough calories in your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so a big part of the meal planning is planning the additional calorie-efficient, nutrition-efficient, but space-efficient foods that you can take. So I just want to illustrate that. So this apple, which would be delicious after 3 or 4 days, it's got 100 calories, lots of sugar, the calories burn off really quickly. I have a jar of, not much bigger than this jar of peanut butter here. It's got 2,250 calories in it. So like a tablespoon of peanut butter has got 90 calories, it's got 4 grams of protein. Like an egg has only got 6 grams. So so the other nutrient dense things like seeds and nuts. So chia seeds, hemp hearts, ground sesame seeds, mix them in small bottles, and whenever you can, add them to the breakfast, add them to your lunch, add them to your dinner. Even if it's a chili or whatever, doesn't hurt. Put in a couple of tablespoons of peanut butter and a couple of tablespoons of mixed seeds. Like these seeds, like a tablespoon of these mixed seeds, has, depending on the mix of the seed, it is 40 to 50 calories, about 2 grams of protein. But they've got lots of other good nutrients in them as well. So a lot of people, when they have spaces in their kayak, they stuff fruit in it. Apples, oranges, carrots, onions. But a long trip, you probably want a room to do that. What you need to be stuffing in all those spare spaces are little jars of peanut butter or almond butter and seeds so that you can get those calories up. So that's it on the food, like take enough.
Just a quick question. If you're somebody who has to do your own cooking because of allergies, whatever, for example, did you put half your food in somebody else's boat?
No, good. No, because
No?
we went through all that discussion and stuff.
Okay.
No, we didn't.
Okay, fair enough.
It just became too complicated. I just dehydrate all my food, so I just take the jet boil, just boil water, rehydrate it all in furnaces. It's just a dead simple system.
No, I was more thinking
No,
about
no,
if
I know, we
your
thought
cash
about
goes,
that.
it's all gone.
We
So,
thought
yeah.
you were so much in shit creek if that happened. The food was the least of your problems. So now, my other topics are camp activities. And I wondered, what would I do about that? And so we were lucky. One of the things that Alan brought up was the beach ball, like this. And it was a lot of fun. Because you're going to have to wake up now here. Because one of the games that we played, I'm going to bounce this out there. And you got to get it back. One of the games we played was could we keep the ball up 3 times? Or how many times could we keep the ball up, bouncing it? So let's see. I gotta bounce it out here.
Sky's falling.
Very good, guys, very good.
So, bring out beach ball. And the nice thing about the beach ball is that on our last night, there was a First Nations family that came in a boat and they brought their kids to swim at the beach we were on. So Alan was able to give the kids the beach balls. And it was really nice.
Yeah, they loved it.
Now, a really goofy thing that Alan brought. This was insane. And if you saw all that stuff on his boat,
Really good.
one of the reasons was he brought this. And this is one of the activities that Alan has too. You know, you spread out these. Here, I'll pass this.
Some people are pretty good at this.
Yeah, I'll pass this back. Try it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works better if you stand up.
Did you make your own,
Now, how do you
make yourself one of those?
I don't know, I just bought that at the dollar store.
Yeah, because then it's.
Came with the
You
fluid.
don't double up with the dish.
I don't know, is it a rubber?
No.
So it doesn't pop.
Wow.
You know, we took pictures, and when we looked at the pictures, when we were on the beach using these things, like, everybody's laughing and smiling, and the sun is going up. And so it's when you're doing the talk, you know, who's gonna bring what? A topic that almost never appears on these lists is like these kind of activities. Who's gonna bring the beach ball, who's gonna bring the games, and do those things. So when you're doing that talk, put that on the list and get somebody to bring those things. I don't have to talk about it, I just thought if we did that, everybody would see that. You should do that. Now the next activity I'm gonna do is, want to talk about is, it's a little more challenging. And you saw, Alan's already laughing. Are you insane? He's saying. You saw the picture at the start where 4 of us were singing and 1 of us was walking down the beach. So one of the things we did on the trip was Alan brought a songbook. And after a couple of nights, Alan brought it out and we started singing from the songbook. Well, 3 or 4 of us did. And then there was a couple of songs that we started to sing every night. Like, you know, one of them was, some of you know it, Fire is Burning, Fire. Because we would sing these, you know, we'd have a campfire. You know, there's different views about campfires. See, people are still laughing about that. We'd have a campfire, we'd sit around the campfire, you know, and dusk would be coming, and it'd be getting dark, and we'd sing some songs. And there were these 2 songs, Fire is Burning, and the other one was Day is Done, that we would sing. And we started doing this every night. Well, this is a long trip. So,
Yes,
so-
it was.
So you're not really good.
For those of them,
Really nice memory.
we did it as a round. So what happened is that we got so used to doing it. There was a couple of nights where for one reason or another we didn't get around to singing the Fire is Burning and Day is Done. And it was like the evening we went off to our tents. It was like it was incomplete. You know, so we actually came back together. One or the other of us would collect the others and say, we got to sing these songs.
Can't tell the song without the song.
It was a very
Soothing
ritual. It's a very calming, restful way of doing it. And so I thought people here would be engaged and willing to take a risk of not being embarrassed that they can't sing, but willing to join in and be part of sharing this experience that we had on the trip of singing these songs. So that the 2 songs, it takes about 1 minute to go through both of them. So the Fire is Burning one.
Maybe I need to get the fire going.
So the Fire is Burning one, we sing
John,
each.
was it only a minute?
It is. We sing whatever line works. We sing each line twice. So it goes Fire is burning, fire is burning.
Draw nearer.
Draw nearer, in the gloaming, come sing and be merry. And then the next one is day is done, gone the sun, from, and then because we're paddling, from the sea, from the hills, from the sky, all is well, safely rest, God is nigh. So I thought we could do this as a response. I could start the line, everybody sings the same line back to me.
Okay.
It's like, and I know most of you. I am watching. Sing back. Realize they're actually really good tenor.
Traditionally, like in Girl Gods, we would sing "Fires Burning" is our fire opening song, or there's other opening songs too. And then you sing other songs, and
good idea.
In the songbooks, but you kind of build up to a thing, and then go down, and then day is done at the end, or taps, whatever. And,
I love it. So, how many people know Fire is Burning?
I don't know.
So we'll see it. So I'll sing the first line. First line. Everybody just sings it back to me.
Okay.
All right. All right. So here we go for it. Fire is burning. Fire is burning. Draw nearer. Draw nearer. In the gloaming. In the gloaming. Come sing and be merry. Again. Come sing and be merry. And the other one was day is done. Day is done. Gone the sun. Gone the sun. From the sea, from the hills, from the sky. From the sea, from the hills, from the sky. All is well, safely rest. All is well, safely rest. God is nigh. God is nigh. Okay. One of you in your group, download lyrics from songs from the internet and print them up. And print them up with, because you're singing at the campfire and nobody has the glasses, use large type. Bring a couple of copies of large type, bring 10 or 12 songs. It's really fun. Thanks, Ron.
Very much, you guys, that was great. And I just want to tell people that the food component of, packing for a lengthy trip, it's probably going to happen around April, and it'll be Debbie and Lynn, and I don't know who else they'll pull into it. But that will get into, because that's a whole other topic. It's a whole evening. They did it last year, and it was fabulous. And then in the new year, the next kind of clinic in the new year, Jenny is going to start the year off on the 9th with injury prevention for sea kayakers, keeping you on the water.
Tony, you've got to go to that one.
That's a really good one, and that's a popular one every year. And then on the 17th, Mike Miles, Tides and Currents. And then at the end of the month, the 31st, I think it is, Tony and Larry, anybody that has gaskets, neck or wrist gaskets that they need repaired, everybody's just going to come here and bring their equipment and all the rest of it, and do a little bit of read up ahead of time so you have a little bit of a clue what you're doing. But Tony and Larry will be sort of on hand to help you if you get stuck.
I think we should thank tonight's team.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, if a session was offered on planning a day paddle, like a day paddle, anybody here interested, or are you way beyond that or into? I used to do one and then it stopped, so, okay.
I'm sure if you put it out there.
Talk to Barbara, she's the planner.
Yeah.
I just wondered if there's enough.
Put it out there, what days?